Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Moonbow Network, episode 2. Welcome, everybody, from Amy's community. This is the only unofficial Mecha Break podcast I think that exists right now. So I thought it was a good idea to start this up at the beginning of the year, especially since we had the announcement of the closed beta test. Last week we had Ion, and we were talking about what we're excited for the future, but today we're getting a little bit more in depth. So as you probably saw when you were waiting for the stream to start, it was about loot boxes, monetization, and the battle pass. Generally what I was going to talk about is what Amy was excited about, but I asked, is there anything that you wanted to talk about on the podcast? And she said absolutely. So without further ado, Amy, would you like to introduce yourself?
And normally I don't come on here, so first time. To the people that aren't from my community, I'm a variety streamer. I do a bunch of stuff. I do first person shooters, horror games, mech games. Got my start on Armored Core actually for Twitch. So I do have a bit of a background with mech games. So
Nice.
my targeting. But yeah. Like I'm really excited for Mecha Break, but like I do have some concern that I do feel like aren't being talked about. So
Yeah, I mean, the floor is yours. Whatever you want to start with, I'm happy to give you the space. And then if there's anything that needs further clarification, or if you want to ask people about stuff, or ask me, or if I want to ask you about stuff, we'll go from there. So what's the first thing you wanted to talk about?
One sec. Let me just have your Twitch chat pulled up here.
No worries.
I can see that all nice and clean. Really kind of one of the big things, I guess, to get the ball rolling is that I am kind of concerned that there hasn't been a whole lot of clarification around the battle pass. Is that I've tried to look into it. Maybe it's been answered somewhere. I don't know, but I've scoured Google. I've tried to look up Q&As. I haven't been able to find it. So if anyone knows if it's out there, please let me know. But really my main concern is that currently there exists two different styles of battle pass. And I believe this was originally introduced. I may be wrong on this. I believe Master Chief Collection was the first one to introduce this, where previously the kind of status quo that had been set was by Fortnite, where a battle pass was a limited time progression system, which every few few weeks would then cycle out. Every few weeks, every few months would cycle out for a new one, right? But once it was gone, it's gone. It's not coming back. You'll never be able to get anything you missed in that, and this creates a cycle of FOMO, where you are basically pressured by the developers into either A, playing the game as much as humanly possible within your set time limit in order to get your money's worth, right? Or B, paying for levels, which most of these passes, let's be honest, are filled with bloat. This is by design because you want to keep them playing for as long as possible, and if you need them to pay for levels, you want there to be as many as possible to get your money's worth from the consumer. So this is where Master Chief Collection kind of came in, is that, and kind of shook things up a bit. Is that previously the status quo was that once the pass is gone, it's gone. Master Chief Collection comes in, and it's like, hey, well, firstly, we'll have the pass be free, right? That's not the important bit. The point is that it established that once the pass is there, it's there. It's not going anywhere, right? And you are free to go back to that pass at any point and continue progressing it to get your unlocks, right? This was continued into Halo Infinite. And then other games have done this, Helldivers too. If you, like, for example, if you weren't playing when the War Bond came out, you can just either play the game to get the super credits, or you can just buy them in the cash shop, but you can get the War Bond still. It hasn't gone away. It's like, yeah, they have a cash shop with an item rotation, but it's not the same as the battle pass being cycled out, you know? So you don't get situations like you do in Fortnite where it's like, "Oh, it's a really cool armor set. Where'd you get that?" "Oh, yeah, it was a limited time thing 4 years ago." "Oh, oh." Yeah, because like, people will never be able to get Doom Guy in it now because he was a battle pass character. Same with Peter Griffin and all this other shit.
That's true.
I don't
Yeah.
play Fortnite, but this is just the examples I'm making. This is that it's like, yeah, it's cool if something comes in and whatnot, but it's like if it's a limited time thing, that causes issues. And my main concern about this is that with Mecha Break, we're not seeing purely cosmetic items put into these passes. We're seeing entire mechs being put into these passes.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's like, okay, firstly, and that's another issue. That's a whole other can of worms that I want to get into. Is that we don't really know how bad power creep's going to be. Power creep is a natural progression of things, right?
Yep.
And there already is the issue of like, oh, this is a cool mech. Oh, well, I can't get this mech anymore because it was in a battle pass 2 years before I started playing. But my main concern is people not being able to get access to these mechs
Mhm.
that were in these battle passes. Because you're locking entire gameplay loops out of the hands of people if they showed up late. Because maybe they didn't know about the game. You know?
Mhm.
And then we also have like there's a bunch of other stuff I do want to talk about, but another concern I do have is while we're on the topic of mechs being introduced by a paid battle pass, right? Is power creep. So, as far as I understand it at the moment, you get access to a set amount of mechs at the start of the game, right?
Yeah. All the base ones that we know
Yeah,
from other tests
yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
Is my concern, which I haven't really seen addressed, is that look, power creep is going to happen regardless. Okay? Is that it's a natural progression of any game. How fast it happens is entirely on the developers and how it's addressed and fixed because it's going to need periodic fixing. Things will need to be rebalanced, brought up to the new standard and whatnot. One of the concerns I do have is that if they're going to start introducing new mechs by the battle pass, because right now we've got a really well-rounded roster. Well, for the most part. I mean, Falcon has a fucking water pistol. If they put Welkin in the battle pass, I will be so mad.
I don't think they're going to put any of the mechs that we've played with already in the battle pass.
I don't either. I think it's only the future stuff we're gonna say. I'm pretty sure like everything that we've seen so far in the CBTs, except for that one, I forget the name of it, is gonna be just coming with the game.
You mean the one that we had after the creator one? What about that one? Or if there was another one I don't know about.
There was one that was gonna be like in a battle pass, but I don't remember what it was called. I think it was like orange.
Because there was in the creator battle part in the content creator beta or whatever the fuck they called it, they put one in the battle pass, but they gave us enough levels of the battle pass to just use it straight away. So I don't know if that was just this is the system we're going to use, as in they're going to be locked in behind a battle pass, or if it was just a weird quirk of a beta. I'm honestly not sure. But I think the ones that we've seen so far and the ones that they keep advertising on Twitter and everywhere else We're going to get all of those base. It would be really, really scummy if they didn't, and I wouldn't expect anybody to play it who was excited for it because that's horrible. But I think future mechs, we can kind of expect it to maybe be in the battle pass, but I'm not sure.
My main concern, right, that I do want to just put out there is
Mhm.
that like I mentioned, power creep is a natural progression
Yep.
of any game, right? I guess my main concern is that I'm very worried that these old mechs are going to fall behind. The launch mechs will fall behind eventually. Let's be real. They will. We'd be kidding ourselves if we said otherwise. Um, my question is, are they going to do rebalancing?
Mm.
Because you're creating a situation here, right? In advance where it's not going to be prevalent at launch. Okay. But 1 to 2 years down the road, okay, when we've got a lot of new mechs from all
Mhm.
these different passes and whatnot, right? If you are a new player getting into this game, right? Are you going to be able, as a new player, with the vanilla mechs, to still be an actual viable player for your team, regardless of your skill level,
Mm.
right? So let's assume that the person's not other dog water. Let's assume they're pretty good, right?
Yeah.
But my main concern, are the old mechs going to still be able to hold their own against the new ones? Or are they going to be a liability? Because if power creep is a thing that's not addressed, then you create a situation where if you get into the game, everyone is going to kick your ass. And there's not a thing you can do about it unless you throw down money to get one of the newer mechs. Do you kind of see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that's going to drive a lot of people away because then they're going to start going, oh, this is pay to win.
Yeah.
And then you create a kind of a closed circuit, which will start a death spiral eventually.
I think it's a valid concern because in any competitive game, I come from fighting games, so I know all about imbalance. There is a tendency for what people call, what is it, the DLC curse or whatever the fuck it's called, where they release a new character that might have a singular new mechanic, or they try something new, and then that character becomes top 5 just purely based on the fact that they have a new thing, and the developers have decided that what they want to do is make this character stronger so that they can nerf them later after everybody's bought them.
It's like a guilty gear moment.
Yeah, it's like, I think Johnny in Strive was a problem in Exard as well. Strive and Exard.
Curse.
The Tekken curse. They know all about Tekken curse. Fuck 'em, Ram. Lydia. It was a mess. But yeah, there's definitely a way that you can approach this, whereby even if they introduce a mech, like let's take Pinaka for example, the new one that came in the creator beta. Everybody agrees that mech's too strong because it does everything. But when people learn how to play around Pinaka, even a very good Pinaka wasn't able to do much against a 2v1 or even a 3v1. So there are definitely ways around it if the developers allow it to happen. And if they don't want it to happen that way, they can just look at what the community is saying. Hopefully, mostly the more competitive players, because balancing for casual players has always been a mess. I think that's a better way to go about it. Release a character, release it broken for all I care. But if you immediately look at what the community is saying in terms of how strong this character is, then you can start to tweak. You don't need to wait for a big balance patch. You can just make a hot fix where this thing doesn't do as much damage, or this thing doesn't heal as much, or you take more damage if you're in this stance or whatever. I would hope that's the approach that AS go for, but who knows?
Yeah, I understand where you're going with this, but it is a legitimate concern. This is because it's like, are they gonna prioritize having these things be intentionally broken and getting worse to make it so you're kind of pressured into getting these battle pass mechs? Because It's like I mentioned, it's an issue in every game. Like I feel like one of the another game that I play, right? Single player RPG, Honkai Star Rail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honkai Star Rail as it exists right now, pre 3.0, vastly different game to the launch version.
Okay. In what
Characters
way? In
are
what way?
way more broken, but this has led to what's called health pool bloat, right?
Okay.
Where new enemies are designed with this increased damage output in mind. This is a problem because they're not going back and fixing legacy characters
Right.
who are now basically completely unplayable in the new content because the damage output's not there, the utility is not there. And you're effectively locking this legacy content out of the modern game
Yeah.
by making it completely unviable. And because we have to remember is that there is a PvE mode or a PvPvE mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my concern is that this balancing will get to the point where it's made with the new mechs in mind, not the originals,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll see them fall behind to the point where they're just completely unplayable in new content.
Yeah. I can definitely understand the fear. I think playing competitive games for a long time, you kind of see this trend and it gets exhausting for a while. But I think the direction that a bunch of these games as a service hero shooters are going at the moment, I think we're moving in a good direction. Because, like you were saying, the Helldivers thing with the Battle Pass is like one of the best things out there at the moment. And the way that Marvel Rivals is doing it, there's a Battle Pass, it never goes away. You can always just go back to it if you need to.
Rivals is a great one.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
Rivals is great. I think there is a place for very strong characters, and I'm going to keep using the word characters because it encapsulates everything. I know we're talking about Mecha Break, but you know, the character. There is a place for very strong characters, and there is a place for weaker but more niche characters. And I'm going to take Rivals as an example here. So, Spider-Man in Rivals generally isn't very good. If you just pick him up, you're not able to play very well with him because he's a very unique character. He doesn't have a large health pool. His defense stat isn't very good, but he's able to dive really effectively and get out of dodge better than any other dive character in the game. And a really good Spider-Man can dictate how a game goes because if you dive a healer, that healer's out for like 5 seconds and then your team can push. It's really, really good.
Same with Iron Fist. Iron Fist is a similar gameplay loop, but he prioritizes damage over basically the ability to get in and get out.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the parry and then his ult is crazy good. So it's these more niche, unique characters that I think on the face of it, people will see these characters and think, oh, they're not very good, but they are at what they do specifically, as opposed to, say, having 15 different versions of Elisnis, where you have a good ranged gun, a good ranged weapon, you have a good melee weapon, you have decent utility, you have decent everything else, but you're not amazing at any one thing.
Yeah,
and
that's what I actually really. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go for it.
I actually really did like that about Elisnas is that the entire kit is basically your jack of all trades, master of none.
Mm-hmm.
So you play kind of a very interesting rock paper scissors role where you may be a good brawler, right? You're very close, like with the close quarters gear that Elisnas gets with one of the I forget which one it is, but against like an actual proper melee mech, like Panther, for example, you're gonna get your ass kicked.
Most of the time, yeah.
Unless you're better than the pilot, but yeah. But that is what I did like is that these specialty units they do feel like a very niche role and whatnot. But like for example, stuff I am concerned about is like Falcon, for example. I feel like Falcon is already kind of at risk of being left behind because the damage output of Falcon is just so piss poor.
I disagree. I think
Mhm.
Falcon's actually very, very good because the utility that Falcon brings is that he isn't hard to catch, or at least shouldn't
Mhm.
be hard to catch. And the ability to be able to go into jet form, into bipedal form,
Mhm.
and have a decently good kit at what it does is
Mhm.
what Falcon needs to have. I think Sky Raider definitely is a bit better just in terms of survivability because he's a heavier mech, but I I kind of see Falcon as like a Spider-Man in Rivals. I think
Mhm.
if you were to make Falcon's damage a bit higher, you're in danger of making Falcon too strong in terms of its damage output. If you give it
Mhm.
more health or defense, you're in danger of making Sky Raider a bit obsolete. If you
Mhm.
give it faster movement speed, you're in danger of making it too fast so that not even mechs like Panther can get him.
Mhm.
So I think at the moment, Falcon's fine. I don't think there's a single thing that any mech does properly badly that I would say needs to be addressed at the moment. I would say some of them are maybe too good that need to be brought down a bit.
I agree with you. I think some of them are too good. Cough, cough, Narukami. Um, because and I am going to elaborate on Narukami a bit. Is that mechs like Sky Raider,
Mhm.
right? They work on an auto lock system,
Yeah.
right, for your weapon. If Narukami is cloaked, you do not really have any options for first strike potential because actually like manually firing your weapons is really hard,
Mm.
if you
Yeah.
get what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're creating this issue where it's like it has nothing to do with the skill of the player. You're literally not giving them the ability to respond.
Yeah.
And I feel like that does make her broken, not because it's her kit herself that's wrong. Because like if you're paying attention, you can spot her. Like she's got the the fucking Halo CE active camo, Halo 2 active camo.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like if you're paying attention, you can see her, right?
Hmm.
But if you're not given the actual tools to punish for actually paying attention, that's not really fair. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Because it's like she's sitting in a spot that you can totally punish, but you're not able to respond because of actual game limitations.
Hmm. I
And so
think. Well,
I do feel like they need to move away or at least give like some max like a proper manual fire mode.
potentially, but I think, and I was having this conversation with somebody else last week
Mhm.
after I finished the podcast, is that if you have a sniper with an auto lock system
Mhm.
in a game where everybody has the ability to boost really, really quickly, snipers
Mhm.
become very, very special in that
Mhm.
they can only be played by people who have got really, really fast reaction times and
Mhm.
are able to headshot somebody by flicking like you're playing Call of Duty from like 2009 or whatever, when you're quickscoping. And I think there's definitely a way to balance between the two, but
Mhm.
a full on lock on, especially for a mech that's fully cloaked, is like if you're a Panther, for example, and you're
Mhm.
fighting, I don't know, a hurricane or an
Mhm.
inferno, and you're focused solely on this mech, and an Arukami out of nowhere shoots you, the only thing you're able to see is that beam trail. So you have to
Mhm.
remember where she is. I think personally, the way that they'd have to balance it is that if Narukami wants to stay in cover, it's
Mhm.
shoot and then relocate.
Yeah.
Like you can't stay in one place and just wait for your camo to reset and then you
Mhm.
stay in the same place. You have to be moving around the entire map to make sure that your cover stays intact. As opposed to Aquila, who's got a heavier sniper rifle, I think it's okay that they stay in one place because they're a
Mhm.
heavier mech, their sniper rifle's heavier, and their kit isn't about being sneaky, it's just about being a
Mhm.
sniper.
Yeah,
So,
because
yeah.
that was actually something I did actually notice a lot during the closed beta test is that some Murakami players realized that like certain mechs had auto lock.
Mm.
And so even though, it'd normally be a death sentence, they would basically park themselves down, shoot, not move. They'd recloak, know that the other person can't hit them because they have an automatic like lock-on system,
Yeah.
which isn't going to be able to detect them because they're cloaked, and then basically rinse and repeat.
Yeah. It
And
was a pain in the
basically,
ass.
yeah, and they basically they would have no way to respond, and it's
Hmm.
like that can't be an option.
True. But to,
Like
to
that
kind of
should
to
not be a viable play strategy of just basically being
I
able to just sit there.
generally agree with that. But just to
Mhm,
kind of bring it back around to the whole power creep thing, I 100% agree with you that
mhm,
there is a problem, well, not a problem, but there's a possibility that power creep will happen when new mechs come out. It just
mhm,
depends what kind of roles are being defined by the time the game comes out. Because you have
mhm,
your heaviers, you have your kind of mediums, more melees or kind of mid-range stuff, and then you've got your lights with the snipers. But
mhm,
there isn't, as I was saying to I last week, there isn't a Trinity system.
mhm,
So what do you do to make sure that a newer mech fulfills a unique role, but isn't too good at that role that it becomes a steamroll if you have that mech on your team, kind of like a Hela and a Hawkeye. Still at the moment, like they haven't been nerfed enough, at least in my opinion. They
mhm,
completely dominate if you're able to just at minimal hit on target, never mind a headshot.
mhm.
So I agree that there might be a possibility that there's a problem, but at the moment, especially when Amazing Season is untested in this kind of sphere, I'm cautiously optimistic, shall we say?
Because I'm not terribly concerned about the launch. There's some things that do need to be rebalanced, like Narukami, for example, but we've already talked about that.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like the game's probably going to launch in a very similar state to what Overwatch 1 was, where we have the
Okay.
original roster, or Rainbow Six Siege, actually,
Oh
where
wow, that's
we
old.
have yeah, I know, right? That or Team Fortress 2 even, right?
Yeah.
Where we have the original roster of characters, right? That are all very much balanced around each other,
Hmm.
right? The issue becomes when we start throwing new characters into the mix
Hmm.
because we intended the system to work as a circle, right? You add an extra point, suddenly this isn't a circle, this is a circle with a triangle pointing off at the end. And then you start adding more shit, and then just suddenly stuff starts breaking down. It's what happened with
Yeah.
Rainbow Six Siege, where like I think everybody remembers Blackbeard when he came out
Remember Blackbeard?
with his indestructible riot shield on his gun.
I know. Just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, and I worry we're gonna have a similar situation where stuff's gonna be really good at launch because they've had time to balance around this.
Hmm.
But Miyabi, Zenless is so good in broken out classes, basically every other agent, making it mind-boggling choice to not take her on every mission. That is another thing I am concerned about. Amatora, that's actually a good point you brought up. Um, is it's not so much of a issue in stuff like Honkai Star Rail or Zenless Zone Zero or Impact Third or other games like that, where it's you've got rotating characters, right? Who
Hmm.
are being introduced. And there is power creep. It's a single player game, right? You're only challenging yourself. Mecha Break is not a single player game. It is a multiplayer PvP, PvPvE game.
Yep.
And so unless they are actively balancing stuff, we are going to get into the situation because Destiny 2 had this situation, right? But it was with guns, where basically you do a raid, right?
Mm.
So like let's say Crown of Sorrow, one of my favorite raids. Um, my all-time favorite was Wrath of the Machine. But the point is, right? God, I missed D1. Point is, we got a very toxic environment where people would go, "Why are you running this and not this? This does this job better, even if the stats aren't 1-to-1, and this is stronger in some areas than this. Why are you running this? We're gonna kick you from the team, or we're gonna be actively hostile and toxic and try to undermine you at every turn for not using the meta gear." So yeah, like I can't count the number of times we're in like it was like Wendigo, I think it was what it was called. It was a grenade launcher where basically it's like people would have a really good power weapon, right? Still did amazing damage, right? God roll power weapon, maybe it was a linear fusion rifle, maybe it was a rocket launcher. But because they weren't using the Wendigo, right? You'd always have these people trying to kick them from the team or telling them to get the fuck out or all this other stuff because they want to do optimal damage to finish as fast as possible.
Right.
And I do worry we're going to have that thing in Mecha Break where if there's stuff that's, somewhat better, we are going to get players being toxic if their team's not doing the optimal pick.
Yeah. That I think is one of the fine lines that a competitive game has to toe, because yes, it's bad if you matchmake into a game without a prearranged group and then you find somebody isn't running the gear that you expect them to on a guardian or a warlock or whatever, and then you treat them like shit. That's a problem. But that problem can only be solved by a good moderation team. Because at least in my opinion, outside of too much homogenization, there's no way to make other elements of weapons or mechs, for example, or characters with different traits and different movesets to make them fun enough to differentiate them. There are certain things you can do. I mean, I'll take a few examples. So Tekken, Soul Calibur, for example, 90% of the cast have what's called special lows. So they're lows that you can block ducking or standing, but if you're pressing a button, you can get hit. 90% of the cast has an I-10 and an I-11, what we call dick punch. In Soul Calibur, it's a 2A, it's the same concept. But the core of the characters are so vastly different that that's what people gravitate towards, not necessarily what's optimal.
Sorry, one moment, I've got to clear my throat. I got a cough.
That's fine, no worries. So when you do that kind of thing, you can make certain stuff that's homogenous so that everybody has a similar kind of advantage in certain situations. But on the flip side, you have to acknowledge that potentially something that isn't optimal, but somebody's bad at, is better. No, what I'm trying to say, something that's not optimal, but they're better at, than is optimal, but they're bad at, is worth it. And that's what needs to be encouraged. And the only way you encourage that, especially to stop people talking like absolute idiots to other people online in a matchmaking environment, is by having a really good moderation team. Record voice chats, have because what raids in Destiny are 3 people?
6 people.
6 people. So have a 7th man.
Strikes and Nightfalls are 3 people.
Gotcha. In Rivals, have a 7th man. In fighting games, it's a bit harder because there's never any dedicated servers because it's one person versus one person. But having a 2nd man, like just kind of overseeing stuff, that's a better situation while still allowing devs to make stuff that might not be optimal but is more fun in the future. It's always a hard line to toe, but I think Mecha Break has to get that right, especially right off the bat. Because I remember during the couple of beta tests I was a part of, it didn't matter what you picked. People would just shit on you regardless. If you were playing Lumine or Pinaka, it didn't matter because one person thought that Lumine was a better healer because it was pure healer. Another person thought Pinaka was a better healer because of the utility that it brought. And then there were people talking about Welkin versus Panther, and it was just like, they all do things differently. one team comp might be optimal, but that might be boring. And you're also matchmaking in a completely random environment. You cannot control what happens.
Yeah, but to some people, this is that they don't care if it's fun. They only care if they see the win screen and they get that little hit of dopamine.
True.
Yeah.
Which is why there's always group systems in these games. Final Fantasy XIV, WoW, you can... I don't know about WoW, actually, but in FF14, you can go into Duty Finder, which is the matchmaking system, and queue up for the newest raid that comes out if you've got the eye level for it. Go do that. Like, if you want to be able... No, if you want to be able to control your environment, get a static, and then go into a raid and you can control it. But if you don't do that and you go into random matchmaking, there should be zero entitlement whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the way that I think Mecha Break should do moderation. Zero tolerance for that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to another topic that I actually did want to discuss.
Yeah, sure.
This is one that actually does concern me a fair bit. Is that, so like I mentioned, I originally got my start with Armored Core 6 on Twitch, right? Now, Armored Core 6, to those that have not played it, some of the best customization that I've actually seen in a game. And like, oh my God, I haven't seen a fucking custom emblem maker since some of the older Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah, but they took that out for a reason.
That is a relic. That is a relic. But AC6 had the ability to choose your armor colors. You could do stripes, custom patterns, all this other cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mecha Break does not need to have that. I just want to say that off the bat. But what I am getting to is that you should at least be able to choose your mech's colors from the get-go. My concern... All right. Oh, what's this? Gundam Break 4 has some stellar customization too. Can do glittery armor and stuff. Cool.
Gundam Break is a terrible series. Anyway, carry on.
Anyway, but the main concern I had immediately out of the get-go. Why are the colors locked behind a loot box? That is a red flag to me. It's like, we're not talking about like cosmetics or emblems or anything. We're talking about basic colors and different shades. Like when you get one of these color loot boxes, you're not getting every shade of red. You're getting one particular shade of red. Do you know how many colors there are?
Yeah.
And it's like,
to be clear, you can also buy colors from the customization screen. You don't have to get them in loot boxes. Yeah. Okay. So when you go into the customization screen and then you bring up a part, there's like individual part customization, or there's general customization. On the left, where all the colors come up, you can click on a color and then you can purchase it with the in-game currency. However, from what I was aware, not every mech has access to every color unless it's locked to that loot box. Because I remember trying to make customizations that fit each other, like purple and black. But some of the mechs, purple, black, and then gold trim, but some of the mechs didn't have the exact same gold. So I don't know if it's just the fact that you need to unlock it with a loot box because it's special for that mech, or if it just wasn't in the beta. I don't really know, but you were able to buy the colors that were base on the mechs with the in-game currency.
See, this is kind of where I'm trying to elaborate on is that this just shouldn't be a thing to begin with. We should not have any sort of a loot box system for unlocking colors. If a color exists, it should not be locked to a specific mech. That makes zero sense. Like,
yeah, I agree.
I have a similar level of criticism with Space Marine 2, a game I frequently play on my channel, where Space Marine 2 does a seasonal model, okay? Where they introduce basically there's all these different Space Marine legions,
Yeah.
as they're called, right? And each season, cosmetics, emblems, and paints for this legion and its successors, right, are
Yeah.
introduced and added to the game, right? So you're getting one brand new set of armor, right? This is what I don't like, and also Mecha Break does something similar. Is that they introduce these special skins, right?
Yeah.
That cannot be customized, that cannot have their cosmetics like altered in any capacity. You can't even change the color of the emblems on these things. Okay. And it's like, to put into context how much you're taking out. Okay. You're taking out a helmet, the left shoulder, the right shoulder, the torso, the backpack, the class item, the kneecap, the other kneecap, the left arm, and the right arm. That's 10 items
Mm-hmm.
that you are locking to a very specific formula. When they could easily just not be locked to a certain combination. It's like
Yeah.
you are taking 10 items out of the cosmetic pool and telling people, this is how they're going to look, this is how they're always going to look, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I just don't think that's a good idea. I think that's very limiting. And Mecha Break does have a similar system where it's like they've got these custom skins with these custom pilots. And it's like your cosmetic, like what you can edit with these like pre-made things are very limited, and I'm not a fan of that. I think it's inherently limiting, and it's almost not worth it.
I'm kind of torn on this because
Mhm.
I'm trying to lean on one side, and I think I slightly am, like 51% on one and 49% on the other, where the nature of the game being a hero shooter means that custom skins, especially if they release them every season, like Overwatch or Rivals now or whatever, they should be designed by people on the dev team that they release, and they either cost money or they are in the battle pass or whatever, and they shouldn't be able to be altered outside of like preset color combinations, because that's what the devs intended for this specific thing, and it costs the money to make it, blah de blah. But at the same time, even though it's a hero shooter, which generally has a history of custom skins that you can't customize yourself, it's a mech game. And mech games in particular have always had customization that far exceeds any other type of game. We talk about Armored Core 6, but even before Armored Core 6, you had games, like the Gundam Breaker series, even though the gameplay is really boring, the customization options are really, really good. Because that's the essence of a mech, is that you're able to swap parts out, put parts in, take them off completely if you want, especially decals and colors and stuff like scrapes and rust and stuff like that. That is the essence of customization in a mecha game. And I think that's the side I'm 51% on, because I'd rather have the ability to customize my mech in its entirety, even if it is just colors, as opposed to getting a custom skin that the devs have created and forced me to use. So, like I say, I'm leaning slightly to one side, but I can 100% see the other.
Because I do just want to say as well, because what we're on the subject, right? Is that you bring up Marvel Rivals? Is that this is the same issue with Space Marine 2? Is that this is not Marvel Rivals? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a hero shooter, right?
Ish.
But you get the point though.
Yeah.
Both Space Marine 2 and Mecha Break are two games with a highly in-depth customization system. where you can edit you can edit different colors on different parts, and you can actually make your character your own.
Yeah.
Right? Having something that cannot be edited in any capacity runs completely contrary to the customization system.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my point, is that you have an in-depth customization system that you have made for your game, and you are telling people no. And you say, it costs money for these people to make these skins. It costs money for them to make the skins for the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It costs money to buy the skins. We're buying them. We should get to say what we want to do with them. That's where I'm getting with this. Is that
Yeah, I can.
ultimately, yeah, it's
No,
like
sorry,
if
carry on.
we're gonna have a customization system, let us use the customization system.
I think, yes, generally, I would agree with that sentiment. But I think there is a happy medium here for a game like Space Marine, because the point of Space Marine's multiplayer and co-op stuff is that you're able to create custom, quote unquote, custom chapters with colors that you want, with emblems that you want on any part of your armor. The difference that I find between the two is that the customization available, and this purely comes down to a numbers thing, the customizations available in mecha games always will far exceed the customization availability for any other game, even if it has a customization system, because of how intricately designed a mech is. I think it's much more valuable to allow people to change the colors and decals and quality of that stuff than it would be for a game like Space Marine. However, there's no reason why Space Marine 2 couldn't do the best of both worlds, where they have the ones that they've created, the armor sets, and you buy them or whatever, you unlock them. I haven't played it in a long time. And that's for your Space Marine because you want to look this type of cool because you like the look of it. But then there shouldn't be a limitation on an extra part of that allows you to customize it.
Yeah, because look, I can somewhat understand what you're saying about it's a custom skin, they intended to look like this. Is that what I'm asking about? Right? I'm not saying they do mesh edits, right? Where basically, excuse me, is that so basically, let's say for skin, right? They decide to edit the mesh, so the actual topology of the model, right?
Yeah.
So it's got its own custom armor parts and all that stuff. Not being able to swap that out is fine, right? But you should still allow people to change the colors and to put their own custom emblems on it, right?
Yeah.
If you I can understand basically saying if you mixed it with different parts, it would ruin the overall aesthetic and might look goofy. I can understand that. However, people should still be allowed to recolor the skin and put whatever emblems they want on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, don't get me wrong, I am not firmly, but I am more on the side of giving the player that choice, because it makes more sense to give that player that freedom so that they can express themselves however they want. If they don't want to, fine. Keep the custom, keep the default ones, but if they want to, they change one color of a decal and that's it. Done. But there should be no limit outside of budget that should allow you to be able to change stuff like decals and colors and quality and all this other stuff. So it could either be a budget reason, in that, again, going back to a Final Fantasy example, there's a reason why a couple of the races can't wear the hats and the helmets, because it takes different dimensions. It's not just about sizing up an item to fit every size of head. It's about making sure that that model is the same quality for every single centimeter different size. That takes time, and Yoshi would rather have them work on battle content or story or whatever. So I think if it is budget, that's understandable. But if it's just a lack of wanting people to be creative, then that's a problem. But to bring it back to Mecha Break in terms of its unlocking colors and stuff, I agree that colors should be all unlocked. And then if they want to have special colors, like somebody in chat was saying, glittery colors or colors with patterns on them that are extra, then you have to unlock them in a battle pass. That, to me, that's fine.
Yeah,
But
I think that works great.
yeah, I think colors should be as standard as it comes. And it's like, yeah, like decals and extra premium colors and extra parts and stuff that are just cosmetic and don't give you any battle advantage. I think those are totally fine to lock behind something because they're extra things. But give me all my colors. Let me do purple, black, and gold. Just give me my colors.
Yeah, it's like there's no reason that the colors should be locked, and then on top of that, there's no reason that they shouldn't be usable on all the mechs. There's just no reason for it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do we want to move on to a different topic now? Or...
To be honest, this is I'm giving you the floor to do with this as you will, because like I said, I was just going to talk about stuff we talked about last week and trying to get your thoughts on it, but you want to talk about like real stuff.
Yeah,
so I'm down for it. You take us where we need to go.
Okay, this is an issue that I may get some blowback for. Because
hold on, just very quickly, Amy. I agree. Space Marine 2 had a really bad problem at launch where you couldn't do anything with the Chaos Marines, and I don't know if you can anymore, and it's really dumb. I get for lore reasons that you can't do it because they're Chaos Marines, but I want to make a purple and green Chaos Marine. All right? Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's dumb. Where it's like, what's the lore? It's like, I have seen a Space Marine walking around with different colored limbs on an Ultramarine battle barge. I think but the lore excuse sailed like 4 months ago.
A while ago, yeah, for sure.
Getting back to the main point though, I may get some blowback for this position.
Everyone brace yourselves.
Because we had an interesting you and I had an interesting conversation in our DMs about this, and it got pretty lengthy.
Yeah.
My concern is monetization. And Helldivers was in a very interesting state because you have the base point for Helldivers priced at £35, right? And that's just for base edition. It's just for base edition. But it helped them recoup development costs, right? And it helped them keep making new content because Arrowhead is not a massive company, right? And
they probably weren't before Helldivers, but now.
Oh, not before. Again, the movie.
Now they're rolling in it. Yeah.
The point is, though, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I might get some blowback. Having an initial price point for entry helped keep the cash shop item prices down. And so my concern is because I don't know how many of you have tried Valorant. I had an ex-boyfriend that tried to get me into it when it first came out, and the shop prices alone made me close the game and uninstall it.
Yeah.
Because when I open that up and I see like fucking what, 70-pound skins?
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And yes, I get that it's Riot, and Riot does what Riot wants, and Riot will always have whales. But my concern already is with the development, because we don't know the figures. We do not know the figures of how much went into developing Mecha Break. Okay? At least not that I'm aware of. And we need to think about what we're getting. We are getting a campaign, if I remember correctly, right?
Some kind of single player content, yeah.
Some kind of a single player PvE mode, right?
Mhm.
We're getting a fully fleshed out PvP mode and some kind of a PvPvE mode,
Extraction.
right? Yeah. Lot of content. My concern is we don't know how much went into making all this.
Mhm.
And is that going to reflect on the shop prices? Are we going to see 40, 50 pound battle passes? Are we going to see 40, 50 pound skins? And so I'm almost wondering if, not for multiple reasons, it might be best if they took the Arrowhead approach and have a small price of entry, 20, 30 pounds,
Mm.
in order to recoup development costs and keep shop prices down. Because that is something that I am concerned about. Because I'd rather have stuff be affordable
Yeah.
in the long run than keeping it purely free to play. And we did have this discussion where, statistically speaking, it has been shown that games that do have a financial barrier for entry do statistically tend to have less cheaters, because if that account is banned, the cheater is less likely to throw down money for a new account.
True.
And when you've got a game like Mecha Break, which is inherently a PvP game, we are going to get cheaters. How well they deal with those cheaters is yet to be seen, because it's kind of been a closed beta test. It hasn't been in the wild yet,
Mhm.
really all that much. So we haven't really encountered cheaters yet
Not
on a
really,
large
no.
scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my concern is that I'm almost wondering if it's better to prevent an influx of cheaters from becoming an actual problem, or to help keep shop prices down if they do have some sort of financial entry cost. Like, I'd be fine with paying 30 pounds to support the devs if it meant that the shop prices are going to be kept low for the game's runtime
Mm.
and there's going to be less cheaters. And I'd like to give the floor to you. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Again, it's a hard conversation because,
Mhm.
like you say, on the one hand,
Mhm.
you prevent cheaters more effectively by just having a barrier of entry being 20 quid or whatever, because nobody in their right mind is going to spend, let's say, if the game costs 20 quid, they're not going to buy it 5 times with 5 different accounts just to cheat in the game. Some people will because they have no lives, but the majority of people won't, which is only a good thing.
Mhm.
And it's a low barrier to entry, which means that more people would be able to buy it as opposed to it being a full price game. But as we were talking about,
Mhm.
more people will be able to play it if it's a free to play game, with the risk of having more cheaters come in, at least at the start, because we don't know how good the moderation is going to be. But then we come to the problem of shop prices, because we don't know anything about AS games
Mhm.
outside of the 2 games that they have at the moment, which apparently are quite successful, but they're gacha games. And Mecha Break is not going to be a gacha, or one of them's a gacha, one of them's an MMO of some description. I'm not super familiar. If anybody else has played, what was it, Snowbreak and the other one, please let me know, because I want more information. It's hard to look at the trends of free to play games, especially free to play MMOs, and think that Mecha Break is going to be any different. But at the same time, they've been more open about certain parts of their development. They've had multiple beta tests in order to test internet infrastructure, and their moderation has been pretty good in terms of getting rid of people who write slurs and stuff. Because I think the first or second day after the creator collab beta went public, people were spouting off all sorts of bullshit in general chat, just when you're sitting in the lobby and you report somebody, and not very long after, at least from my experience, they were banned. Never heard from them again, and people were complaining about shit on Twitter. But that's a good thing, in my opinion. So that sets a decent precedent in terms of moderation. It just depends on its content moderation and its anti-cheat and what their community managers and community representatives view as cheating or as harassment or as insulting or hate speech or whatever the hell. But purely from an entry standpoint, because we all know that mecha is a really niche genre, unfortunately. It's gaining more traction, especially in the West, because of series like Eva, because of series like Gundam. There was a couple that I mentioned, something with a 7 in it. I can't remember. We're not counting Darling in the Franxx because it's utter garbage.
Wait, you don't like giant space waifus that were previously flesh and blood, but then turned into mechs.
I'm good, thank you. We're also getting the Gundam TCG coming over to it's a worldwide release as well. One of my friends went to Utrecht for like the beta event, got a couple of boxes. But yeah, it's becoming more widespread as a genre, which is great because giant robots are awesome. But it's still a niche genre inside a genre that's already quite saturated, the hero shooter genre. The barrier to entry, in my opinion, should be 0 in terms of people being able to download the game and play it, and if they don't like it, they drop it. And then, well, because we're talking about shop prices, right? I am of the opinion that if a skin pack wants to be 60 quid because a whale is able to afford it or somebody more well off is able to afford it, then they should be able to do that in terms of their cosmetics pricing. However, a caveat is that you should be able to buy individual pieces for much cheaper because you want a weapon or a helmet or a chest piece that has a specific design, because that is the essence of consumer freedom, as it were. And
So
I think that's a better approach.
So basically what everybody told 343 to do with Halo Infinite instead of the ridiculously overpriced shop bundles.
I mean, I'm not too familiar, but I will take a word for it, and 343 seem to have mishandled the Halo franchise so badly. Oh no, they've mishandled it well in that it's terrible.
Good was Halo 4, and that was like what, 2011?
Probably, yeah. It's been a while.
But yeah, for context, is that 343, right, with Halo Infinite. Okay game, right? But the shop prices were horrendous.
Yeah.
Because basically everything was bundled. Everything was bundled. And they'd fill these bundles with a lot of bloated shit that you wouldn't want in order to justify the price. And people told them over and over and over again, let us buy the individual pieces.
Yeah.
So that we can get what we want. Because like, if somebody wants a little wrist thing, right? Little piece for their wrist, they're not going to give a shit about the helmet or the shoulder pads
exactly,
or the torso, whatever. They just want the wrist thing. That's all they want. And when you lock individual pieces, like, yes, it's cosmetic, I get that, but when you lock individual pieces behind bundles, you got to remember is that if everything is locked behind bundles, that adds up. And that adds up. A 20-pound bundle, right? One item that you may want it, maybe in a 20-pound bundle. There may be another one. And by the time you finally get your perfect looking character you're satisfied with for the look, you may have spent well over 140 pounds.
Yeah.
Because all the shit you want is in different bundles.
Yeah, for sure.
And I agree with you. Is that if they want to have everything be in one giant bundle, that's fine. Okay? But people need to have the option to not only earn the premium currency, like in Helldivers.
Yeah.
But to be able to purchase it individually. And that was why I did advocate for a very low cost of entry, right?
Yeah.
Price point, because it does help take off some of the financial burden of having the premium currency be earnable. Because a game like Helldivers, prior to Sony fucking it up, right, did get into a very kind of oversaturated genre. I don't know if you can technically call Helldivers an extraction shooter, right?
Yeah.
Kinda.
Maybe kind of, but it's honestly in its own genre at the moment. Like the only thing that was similar to it was the Starship Troopers game that just came out, out of early access. So,
but point is, right, is that Helldivers, prior to Sony fucking it up with the region lock shit and then ruining its image, was a breakout hit. And part of the reason why so many people tried it was because of the low price point. And it's like, yes, you can make the argument that statistically speaking, they may have more numbers, right? But this is not a Marvel IP. This is in a very niche genre, right? And I do think it would be better if the devs recouped some of their costs by maybe having like a barrier of entry that was like, what, 15 quid, 20 quid?
That's the thing. Yes, logically it would follow that if they had a 20 quid price point, logically that you would expect shop prices to be lower because you've already spent money to play the game at its base level.
Because what I want to avoid is that I want to avoid a Fortnite situation where, and a Halo Infinite situation, where you've got £20, £30 skins in the shop. And then there's no way to earn those premium currency. And the devs justify it by, oh, well, the game's free to play.
Yeah.
And that does make sense because if the game's free to play, then they need to recoup costs somehow. And by having a very low barrier of entry, very low financial barrier of entry, you are kind of taking the financial burden off the devs. And that does make cosmetic content, which, let's be honest, is that, well, people say, oh, it doesn't impact the game. It does. You want to look cool when you're playing the game.
It doesn't impact the mechanics of the game, but it impacts how you feel when you play the game, for sure.
It impacts how you feel,
Yeah.
right? You want to look cool while you're playing the game. Let's be honest. Back in the day, our games came with all the cosmetic shit attached. It was not paid for. Right? This is, we cannot go back. The cat is out of the bag. Right? But keeping prices low to make that cosmetic content more accessible should be a priority over it being free, because it is going to affect player enjoyment. If people aren't able to look cool while they're playing the game, it's going to affect their enjoyment a bit.
Yeah, it's really hard to gauge how much it will affect them though, because I look at games like Overwatch and Rivals, and even, was it, The First Descendant has recently come out. The First Descendant has lent so hard into its aesthetics because the game's pretty bad, like as it is. That's all people really care about when they bring it up. Was it First Descendant, Last Descendant? I can't remember what it's called.
First Descendant.
First Descendant, yeah. It's all about the waifus, and that's fine if that's what you want to play a game about. But what percentage of people will stop playing the game because of how expensive their favorite skin pack is? That's an issue that you need to contend with, because on the one hand, as a free-to-play game like Valorant, for example, you can download the game, play the game, get good at the game, and that's how you personally feel good. But if somebody wants to buy a skin because it makes them feel good, it might even make them perform better because they're happier looking at a gun skin or an operator skin or like agent skin, how do you how do you resolve that dispute where somebody is just as valuable as a player because they engage with the game, albeit differently? If they just want to play casually, one spends money because they want to look cool, one spends money because they've put a lot of hours into it and they want something to show for it. Is it better that you make both, for both of those people, if you make the price lower because they've bought into the game? Is it better to have a free to play game that has cheaper individual pieces but a expensive bundle? Because the barrier's zero? Like, it's really hard to come to a definitive conclusion, at least I would say.
We do have some audience members that are actually kind of agreeing with this. Is that we've got Matoro here. I played First Ascendant because I liked Warframe. I saw the shop prices and left, not to mention the characters handled like pickup trucks. Trilarch says, Ja, I play better Space Marine 2 PvP when I play Chaos as a Night Lord. Is that, and I do agree with that somewhat. Is that like Phantasy Star Online 2 as well? Is that when you
NG was a
realize
great game.
how much stuff is like behind like loot boxes and whatnot, it is kind of disheartening because you want to look cool because everyone else looks cool. And then at the same time, right? This is that my personal experience. I straight up left Valorant after there was basically no path of progression to having anything that actually looked good.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I do feel like it is a little disingenuous to discount the impact of being kind of gated out of cosmetic content does have on people.
Yeah.
Because how many people play Fortnite and then stick with the default skins?
I actually don't know. Probably not many.
Not a lot of people.
No.
They immediately make a beeline for the cash shop because they want to look cool. Nobody wants to be the default.
Yeah.
Nobody. And I feel like this isn't as much of an issue in Marvel Rivals because there's not that many skins.
Yet.
True. And I can already tell you, in the lobbies that I've played on stream, when a skin option is available, people are going for it.
Yeah.
Because people just don't like being the default option.
I mean, I would say less so not liking being the default option, but the default option being default by definition is not as cool as the new thing. So I would honestly say if Moon Knight released with the I think it's called the Blood Edge, or is it Iron Man's? I can't remember. But the one in the new Battle Pass, if Moon Knight
with the black run, with
yeah,
the vampire on the back,
that one.
Actually,
well, that's the thing. If Moon Knight had released with that skin, but then the white Moon Knight skin that is the default was an unlock, because it's actually a custom one for Rivals. I don't think he's ever had like a real mech suit or like a more robotic metallic one. Anyway, if that was the character design, the black and red one, but then the white one came out as a skin, people would want that because it's new and different to the default one. So it's more about what you're offering than what has come before. So taking your point about path to progression or path of progression is that might be something that they could do to continually bring revenue in along with a cash shop. So you have the free battle pass, you have a cheap cash shop, but your premium battle pass has all this extra cool shit that you can unlock without having to pay for it. But when you want to pay for it, you get all that shit. So say the battle pass has 100 levels. As you play the game, you level up from 1 to 50, and then within that 50 levels in the premium version, you get colors, you get mech suits. I'm talking about Mecha Break here. You get mech suits, you get body parts, you get new weapon skins and stuff like that. You still have the ability to unlock them by just playing the game, but if you want to pay a little bit of money to get like 10 levels worth of it, because not 10 levels worth. I'm explaining this really badly. You play the game, the free and premium level up at the same time. But if you want the thing that's at level 10 and you've already got there, you can pay a bit of money to just get the ones up to level 10 rather than having to pay for the entire premium battle pass.
I get it.
Yeah, I think we're just talking about more options. That's all anybody really wants. More options for the cool stuff that they release.
Yeah. Because like, and getting back to the original kind of argument as well, is that there's an argument to be made of like, oh well, Marvel Rivals released it, it's a free to play game, and the shop prices are low. The shop prices are low with Marvel Rivals because it is a Marvel IP. It is one of the most popular IPs on the planet. It is going to attract God knows how many people. And they can afford to keep the prices low because they know people are going to buy that up. It's one of the most mainstream IPs. Actually, it's probably the most mainstream IP right now.
Like top 5 for sure.
Yeah, top 5 easily. Star Wars used to be up there. But it's like, on the flip side, Mecha Break is not Marvel. Mecha Break is not going to have hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people.
Just for context, it has 517,000 people on Steam alone.
So definitely millions of people then. Like Marvel is like in the millions.
Yeah.
It's not going to have millions of people on that are going to be buying this. This is that mechs are ultimately a very niche genre. And we do need to make sure that the devs are making money so that they can continue supporting this. But we need to make sure that they're making enough money that things can be kept fair in terms of monetization.
Yeah.
If I'm making sense.
Yeah. I think to boil this specific point down, I think we're both kind of in agreement, and generally people who play these games are kind of in agreement too, is that player choice is important. If somebody wants to buy a skin pack or a cosmetics pack in general for 60 quid, let them. But there should be paths to unlock this stuff for less money so that people feel like they can eventually get it if they continue to contribute to the game. Yeah.
I also don't feel like stuff should be, I don't feel like FOMO should be a thing, especially with the item shop and whatnot. That's one of the things I hate about Helldivers, and I hate it about Destiny, is that Destiny with its Eververse shop, basically it's like a jingling little key in front of you. It's like, oh, well, you better get it, because if you don't get it, it's going to be gone for a season, and then we'll bring it back. But it used to be a lot worse. And then with Helldivers, it's like, hey, want this one very specific armor set that's going to be in the premium shop? We don't know when it'll be back. We're not going to tell you when it's going to be back, and it'll probably only be in the store for 48 hours.
Yeah.
And it's like, I hate FOMO like this. And
yeah, I agree.
I kind of like what Marvel Rivals is doing, where they've got like a catalog. Destiny finally did it, but they had a catalog of, that I've noticed, of like past skins and whatnot, where it's like, oh, this isn't on the front page anymore, but you can still get it. It's not gone. It's not like, oh, you didn't have 30 extra quid this month to throw around for a cosmetic skin. Too bad. It's gone. That's what I hated about Destiny for a bit.
Yeah.
And actually, kind of, I did want to comment on this before I forget. This is that you mentioned like people kind of don't want to go with, it wasn't your exact words, like mentioned like they don't want to go for what's standard, right? For like you brought up Moon Knight, right?
Oh, like a default skin.
Funnily enough, it was the exact same way in Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, where in Destiny 1, specifically on the Titans, right? Titan Mama since year 1. There was a unified undersuit scheme on all the armor pieces. So basically everything had one unified undersuit, which kind of lended to the theme of modularity with the different armor pieces, right?
Right.
Rise of Iron comes out and kind of breaks the steam a little bit of
Mhm.
there being a unified undersuit. Destiny 2 rolls around. Completely gone. There is no more unified undersuit. And this causes issues because it's like, well, you've got clashing undersuit pieces.
Yeah.
And so, it's not as bad on like hunters and warlocks and whatnot, but with Titans where you've got a visible undersuit, it did cause issues. And
Mm.
so when they had the season of opulence where they started introducing kind of old armor pieces or old themed armor pieces that did have this unified undersuit theme, people are just like, I'm back. And it's like this would have been like a legendary or a random drop that people really wouldn't have cared about and probably would have bitched and moaned. But it's like it's the fact that it wasn't the default or wasn't the standard that attracted people to it.
Yeah.
Hell, I did the exact same thing. The second I saw that they were bringing back like this, okay, they've got a couple of pieces in there. It's like it's the prodigal set for one of them, and then they've got the it's I forget what it's called specifically. It's like a combination of the Spectre armor and the Jovian armor, I think it is. And it's got like a bunch of these little Cabal themed bits glued on it, but it's like it's still got that undersuit. It's like,
Hmm. Yeah.
I rocked that until I dropped Destiny 2. Lightfall absolutely just killed my interest in the game, and it never recovered.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people didn't like Lightfall.
Yeah, it's like we literally had this scene. Okay, so Callus was a long-standing character since the start of Destiny 2, right?
Mhm.
So they go to kill Callus off, right?
Mhm.
And it just kind of lends the credence to how out of place the whole thing felt. Is that it did not feel like a Destiny DLC. It felt like a Marvel movie because
Yeah.
you have his daughter, Keitel, who's over his corpse mourning the loss of her father, even though they were at odds. And then this fucking Silver Surfer wannabe comes in and goes, "Oh, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right?"
I've seen the what are they called? The Sky something?
I don't remember what they're called, but it's like, are you fucking serious, man? And it's like, yeah, it's
Cloud Stride does that.
I don't even fucking remember what they were called.
Yeah, the
Like,
design is
oh god.
but yeah.
Getting it back to Mecha. Let's get back to Mecha Break.
Well, yeah. It's just it's frustrating because we need a mecha game that stays and isn't broken and has good cosmetics but isn't too expensive but continues to have support.
Mhm.
We don't have any of that shit. We have
We don't.
so many fucking hero shooters and different extraction shooters. Like Hunt, for example, is a great game, but it doesn't have mechs in it. Like,
Mhm.
we need Mecha Break to succeed. And I think in terms of all the stuff we've mentioned today,
Mhm.
the monetization is going to be the biggest thing, especially as a free-to-play game. And it's what's going to turn away a lot of people.
Mhm.
All we need to bank on is if the developers listen to the community and don't pull an Arcade. As long as they don't do that, we're good.
Yeah, I do just want to say though, this is because I have gotten into disagreements with the people about this.
Mhm.
Is that the mech genre is in a terrible state right now. It's in an absolutely terrible state right now. There was that Gundam hero shooter. I forgot the name of it.
Evolution.
Evolution, Gundam
Mhm.
Evolution, thank you. Which died shortly after it came out.
Yeah. But from what
Uh,
I was telling me, it wasn't because of dev decisions. It was because of producer decisions in terms of monetization and stuff like that. So
But
yeah,
point is though,
yeah,
is that the genre is in a terrible state right now. We don't have any high-end mech games that are of the AAA level that are being produced right now.
yeah.
The best that we had was Armored Core 6. And rather than getting the proper FromSoft treatment that they do with the Souls games, where you have 1 to 2 DLCs that are made, which greatly increase the amount of content, add a bunch of new story and bosses and all this other stuff for extra replayability, and add a bunch of new weapons and all this other stuff that improves the longevity of the game to the point where it can last for years without proper support.
Yeah.
We did not see that with Armored Core 6 because From Software dropped an absolute banger game. They did a couple patches. They added a brand new armor, or a brand new set of mech parts. I used them on my AC Shelob. That's what I call her. She was a I won't get into details. It was an interesting. It was
Was it a quadruped by any chance?
It was a quadruped that chucked missiles, and if you tried to get up close to her, she'd beat you to death with a plasma mace.
Fair.
I forget what they called it. It was like a throwable melee weapon. I forgot what it was officially.
Oh, is it the one that Rusty uses? Or that one?
No, I don't think so. It's purple. It's like a ball you throw at him.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I can't remember what
So
it's called.
basically,
Yeah.
my whole shtick was that you'd basically be forced into a position where you'd have to fight me in close quarters unless you want to be pelted to death by missiles, and even then, I just beat you to death.
Fair.
Point is, though, right? Is that getting back on the topic? They had an amazing base. They immediately abandoned it to go work on Elden Ring. And when work on Elden Ring was done, nothing's been done with Armored Core 6. The game is basically dead on Twitch.
Yeah.
There's still some people that play it, but it does not have a healthy population. And
no, I think on Steam it says it's 2,500 people.
Not
great.
Population.
No.
Like you compare that with a game like Dark Souls 3, for example, or yeah, you get the point.
I mean, even Elden Ring.
Elden Ring, yeah. The point is, though, is that Armored Core 6 was abandoned before it was ready to go out on its own, in my opinion. And I feel like this actually puts the developers of Mecha Break in a very advantageous situation because we don't have a Call of Duty of the Mecha series. We don't have a Battlefield. We don't have a Fortnite. Is that we for basically a core IP, right? For example, Call of Duty's kind of the undisputed king of first-person shooters.
Yeah.
We all know that. Fortnite is the king of battle royale genres. We all know this. Mecha Break has the opportunity here in a landscape that is extremely dead with a bunch of fans that have been dying for a proper game in the genre to establish itself as the de facto monopoly of the mech genre and hold that spot potentially permanently if they don't fuck this up. Because right now there is no competition.
Oh.
And I think they can do it. I have a strong feeling that they are going to actually pull this off. But it does kind of go to show you that they've got a lot of stuff in their favor right now. It's just that there's not any competition.
No.
All the competition's been abandoned or dead.
Yeah. I think that I think a major part of the abandonment of Armored Core 6 is to do with FromSoft's netcode in terms of its PvP stuff. Because, well, that and the complete imbalance, especially in the beginning of Armored Core 6.
God, I fucking hated LCBT.
I mean, look, I have to admit, I made 3 ACs, and my last one had dual Zims and the rusty dual blade thing, and I Rex. Dual Zims were broken. That was so much fun, but like it should never have released in that state. Like it just does too much damage.
That's kind of what led to the creation of stuff like missile boats and whatnot and LCB tanks. That the dual Zimmermans were just too powerful. So either you needed something that would fight them outside of their range and effectively punish, or you needed something that could tank the hits and then punish them so severely that it just whatever damage they did was so insignificant that it just didn't matter.
Which was hard to do that against dual Zims, because it didn't matter how tough your hide is, dual Zims are going to pierce it every single time. But then they nerfed it, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. But, the stun needle!
Stun needle was insane.
Oh, God. Oh, did you ever run into those taser builds? Not just with stun needles.
No, I ran stun needle once, but it was too cumbersome for me.
People found out how to make these stun pistols absolutely fucking melt, and they got scary.
I need to watch that on YouTube. I need to see some of that.
I can send you a few videos of it, but yeah, no, stun pistols were actually really fucking scary when people found out how to actually use them.
Fair enough.
Actual nightmare fueling, right?
I mean, but yeah, that is part of the reason why it died very, very quickly, because it was all PvE stuff to make it really fun to play, but then you didn't have any balancing for PvE. They just allowed you to take your crazy build into PvP and wreck stuff. So,
and then we didn't get any massive story expansions like in Dark Souls or Elden Ring to add more replayability, because people just have the base campaign, which isn't actually very long. There needs to be more content there in order to add replayability for people that aren't interested in PvP.
I mean, not to go too far off course here, but that happened with Sekiro as well. Like, Sekiro is my favorite From game, just because of how much of a departure it is from the basic Dark Souls games. It's my favorite From Souls-like, I should say. And then it got completely abandoned. Like, there were a few patches here and there, but they got the boss rush mode, and I think that was it. Nothing else. No story expansions, especially after the multiple endings where you become Shura, for example. Nothing. Just gone. It's so sad.
And people have argued like, oh, well, Armored Core is an established series in the mech genre, and regardless of what they release, people always come back to Armored Core. That's true. But when they're done with Armored Core, they're going to go back to Mecha Break if they make a good game.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they'll check out Armored Core and whatnot, but the devs have the opportunity to make themselves the de facto game.
Yeah.
Or IP that people are going to come back to, because right now it is Armored Core. And Matora says, something about, we have GBO2 and that thing is still from the PS3. Like, yeah, that is their competition right now.
Yeah. Battle Operation 2 is
from the PS3 and a dead FromSoft game. They've got this in the bag.
Pretty much. They don't need to fuck it up.
But the thing is that I think we are starting to see other competitors try to get into this field. Like, for example, the World of Warships devs, World of Tanks devs, they're trying to get into this genre.
Are they making something?
Yes, Steel Hunters.
Oh, okay.
On stream, it's fucking terrible. Don't play it.
Okay, all right. Very, very quickly. Steel Hunters is not the same thing, because yes, it has giant robots, but the core of it could satisfy both players. I don't think it would ever take away people from Mecha Break, because
I don't either.
However, I will say when I played it, because it was something so different in the way that you play the game, like the mechanics of it, I actually had a fair bit of fun when I was able to get into a match. The problem is that it handled terribly. Nothing
Hmm.
feels like a giant robot. It feels like you're just
Hmm.
walking in mud, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
Um, and there
The,
is a
the
very fine line between the two. But yeah, carry on.
the main point I was trying to make though is that we are starting to see people get into the space, but people don't seem to understand what makes a mech game a good mech game.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what we've seen with Steel Hunters is that they are trying to get into the mech genre, but again, they don't seem to understand what people actually want out of a mech game. And we've seen this in other mech games where there's not really an agreement on or a standard on what should make a mech game a mech game. Everybody tries to do their own spin, their own take on it.
Mm.
And I feel like Mecha Break has figured out to an extent that formula.
It's a hero shooter with big robots. That's all everybody ever wanted.
Customization.
Yeah, exactly. that's, that's it. That's the thing that people wanted. We've got the first person Overwatch. We've now got the third person Marvel Rivals. We've now
Mhm.
got the third. Well, we're getting the third person Mecha Break.
Mhm.
That's the
But
hole that needed to be filled.
but I will say this is that I feel like it can fit the hole made by Armor Core. Because if they're going to have it where these mechs are going to be able to use different weapons, that
Mm.
opens up a whole new door. Is that what becomes a hero, right? Is less of a like a like an Iron Man and
Mm.
whatnot, and more of a classification of vehicle where it's like it can
Yeah.
be outfitted with different hardware to drastically change the performance. We saw this in Team Fortress 2, where is that and this ultimately increased the longevity and the replayability is that heavy, for example,
Mm.
had access to tons of different miniguns that completely changed up how he played the game.
Yeah.
You had the Tomislav, which ran completely silent, had a lower fire rate, but could be deployed almost instantly. You had the stock minigun with the base stats, required a normal rev up time,
Mm.
and it was kind of the baseline. You had the Brass Beast, which had a longer wind up time, but dealt more damage. You had the Huo Long Heater, which consumed ammunition, but it deployed a ring of fire around you, so it was great for anti-spy stuff. And this led to a situation where when you're playing Team Fortress 2, right? Your teams your teams may have two heavies, right? Blue team and red team may have a heavy, but their loadouts may be completely different. And they may play completely differently as a result and
Right.
completely change up the role they fill on the team. And I feel like that is an important thing because when because think about this, right? Is that we kind of this may be kind of a reach. We do have to an extent a class system in
Yeah.
Armored Core as it exists. Is that you've got the reverse quad legs, you've got the tank treads, you've got the quadrupeds, right? And then you've got the
Yeah.
good old, you know, two old stinky legs, right?
Yeah.
But that's going to change up the hardware you can equip, how much of it you can equip, and ultimately how you move around the game, right?
Yeah.
And to an extent, you are kind of having a class system without having it be a hard class system of no, you can't use this, you can't use this, you can't use this. Do you kind of get what I'm saying, or
I do. I think it's much more difficult to do that in a game like Mecha Break, just
I'm
purely
not saying Mecha Break.
because.
I think Mecha Break's done a good job with what they've got.
I see. Okay.
I think Mecha Break is a good compromise because they're effectively going the Team Fortress 2 route, which I really do like.
Well,
Where
I would say I dislike the system, the mod system. I think the mod system is terrible. I think they should get rid of it
I
completely.
completely agree with you on the mod system,
Mm.
but I am interested to see in where they take the ability to swap weapons out.
Yeah, so
'Cause
that's only going to be in the extraction mode, which is an interesting choice.
I
Um,
I don't think it's a wise choice. I think that should apply to all modes.
No, I think it should only apply to the extraction mode, only because the extraction mode is where the customization has the most impact and can engage the most people. I think in the 3v3 and the 6v6, just standard hero shooter stuff like escort and all that other stuff, base mechs are fine because that's like the essence of that game mode is the mech that you pick and you have to play around those. But in the extraction mode, where there's a lot more freedom, where you move, how you approach fights, do you go for PvE first to build up resources or whatever the hell the game mode is, because we've never actually been able to get our hands on it yet. That's where the most value lies in terms of customization. But then I also think outside of the extraction mode, you should have a 1v1 dueling system where those customizations can also apply. So you get the duel system and the extraction system are coupled in that the customization system extends beyond just colors and decals and stuff. But the classic hero shooter stuff, the 3v3 and the 6v6, keep it standard because that's what everybody knows and loves.
I am going to have to disagree with you there. I think we are going to have to agree and disagree.
How
I have
dare
1.6
you?
thousand hours in Team Fortress 2. And I can tell you that people having more control over their character and how their character plays compared to running them stock is going to increase the replay value and keep people around, because people may not like how the stock gun on a character works. I fucking hated the stock gun on heavy. I loved the Tomislav, and that ultimately made me pick up heavy and actually play heavy.
Okay.
And here's the thing, is that not everyone is going to like the stock build of a character.
True.
But if you have the option to swap out weapons, like your guns, your melee option, whatever it may be, people that might not have picked it up will consider picking it up, because maybe the tweak that this one item offers is what gets them to try it out and to stick with it. Because, for example, heavy in Team Fortress 2, again, comes stock with a minigun, a shotgun, and a pair of fists.
Right.
Almost nobody runs the shotgun. Nobody likes the shotgun. The stock shotgun just isn't fun. People will either use the sandwich to restore health, they'll use the steak, which gives them an actual buff to their primary and their melee option. They may use one of the other special shotguns. But hardly anyone runs the stock because it's just bland. It's boring. There's nothing fun about it. Alternatively, you have the scout. Some people like to use the scattergun, but then you've got a weapon like the force of nature, which, if you actually know what you're doing, you can use it to get an extra jump, which completely changes up the scout's mobility options. Or the spy, where
just to ask quickly, does Team Fortress 2 have any other modes besides...
It has a competitive mode, yes.
Right, but does that competitive mode differ from base modes in terms of how it plays out, or is it all kind of convoy or whatever the hell you want to call it?
You mean payload?
Payload, that's it, yeah.
If memory serves me correctly, forgive me, it's been a few years. I believe they still have control points, King of the Hill, and payload. I don't know if they have captured the flag.
But payload is the one, like in most, team games, payload is the one where everybody goes to because it's like the most competitive one.
You push cart from A to B.
Yeah.
But hold up. In the MB Discord, we actually had a few guys say they didn't want to play, say, Panther. Think about picking it up when they saw using a rifle in the Mashmak base trailer. Darktide builds, you can have 3 zealots in a team, and all of them can be wildly different. A charge zealot plays different from a crack knife, who is different from support. I want to play an Ogren because I like gun Ogren and I like charge Ogren. Matoro's got a good point actually about Darktide, especially. Darktide's another good one where it's like, for example, I like to play guardsman, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are several different guns for guardsmen. That's going to change up how guardsman plays. You've got the recon las rifle, I think it's called originally, that's very good at crowd control. But I like the bolt gun, which you don't have a lot of ammunition, but you basically become a anti-tank platform on legs.
Okay.
You don't have a lot of ammunition, but the big scary guys that come out, the armored enemies and whatnot, you can just mow right through them. But
We're talking about 40k Darktide, right?
Yeah, we're talking about 40k Darktide. But
Okay.
then at the same time, it's like you don't want to use your bolt gun on the hordes because you want to save it for the big tough enemies. So compared to the las rifle, where it's like you use your las rifle for mainly mowing down the horde,
Mm.
you're going to be forced to rely on your melee weapon. It completely changes how the class plays. And then, like Matoro said, is that like Ogrins, for example, is that there's people that like to do the melee riot shield builds, and then there's people that like to do the I'm not an Ogren player, so I don't know exactly what it's called. But there's like this big fucking gun that they like to hold around. It looks like a LMG emplacement.
Okay, interesting. But just again, point of clarification: Darktide is only a PvE game, isn't it?
That is a PvE game.
Yeah.
But I suppose it was a good example on Matoro's part. But
well, I would honestly say that because we're talking about a PvP game, the way that you handle customization has to be completely different. I get
that, but I am going to fall back on Team Fortress 2, which is a PvP game. It
is
at its core a PvP game.
But the level of customization, or compared to Darktide, seems it doesn't seem as in depth as a Darktide build.
That is true, but we were talking about just weapons. But I do think that doing something similar to Team Fortress 2, which is a fellow hero shooter, which is also a PvP game, is a good idea. It extended the life of Team Fortress 2 for years, to the point where even though TF2 didn't get an update in close to like 7 years at one point, it's still going. Like that is the replayability of Team Fortress 2. When you have so many options.
I can understand what you're saying, but the difference that I think Mecha Break would excel at is the fact that it has an extraction mode, and focusing on that mode where you have customization options in terms of your loadout makes more sense than doing it in a 3v3 or a 6v6 like classic hero shooter stage, only because the nature of mechs seem to be vastly more plentiful in terms of what you could potentially do to them as opposed to a Team Fortress 2 character. And then going to the PvE side of stuff when you're talking about Darktide, and I 100% don't mean this to sound disrespectful, but it's a completely different genre in terms of what a developer is able to do to give the player an opportunity to have fun, because it's like PoE as well, or Divinity or Diablo, your builds can vary completely differently even though you play the same class, but because it's PvE, you're able to do that. Whereas when you go to a PvP game, you have to think about the balance in addition to having fun. And now I just looked at this trailer that somebody else had mentioned, Taco, about Panther having a rifle. He doesn't have a rifle. He has like a beam SMG or something. I don't like that, honestly, because that's not what Panther is about. Panther is about having no ranged weapons, closing the gap with really good boost, and engaging the enemy in melee. Now, the different melee weapons is fine for me because that still is the spirit of the character of the mech. But giving them a ranged weapon really seems to take away the point of the mech itself. And now, if that's what the developers want to do, then they can lean into that wholeheartedly, and I'm on board for it, because then you have to go fully into this modular approach to a mecha game. But if it's only a few things here and there, that feels like wasted effort. Yeah, go for it.
Can I go?
Yeah, I'm done.
I just want to make sure I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
So I'm gonna have to disagree again with breaking this. Like, I understand what you're saying. It's like, oh, well, their focus should be on the extraction mode. I do not believe that the gameplay and the performance of a mech should change depending on the mode, especially when you talked about doing 1v1s. Is that, and this also runs completely contradictory to what makes a mech game a mech game. And being a mech game is the customization. This isn't Marvel Rivals. This is a mech game. Customization is part of the point. Being able to choose the color of your mech, the decals, the weapons. That's the point. Now, I do agree that there should be themes of a mech. Like, for example, I agree that Panther shouldn't have a rifle. But why can't Panther have a big ass sword? Why can't Panther have a riot shield and a big fucking club? Also, excuse my language.
No, that's fine. No, I agree with that because it's still because it only changes the way the melee aspect of the mech plays. It doesn't change the core of the mech itself. So I'm fine with having a shield and a massive club.
This is where we got into a disagreement on. This is that you said that this should only apply to the extraction mode and a 1v1. I disagree. This should not change in a 3v3 and a 6v6 setting. You are fundamentally changing how the game plays depending on the player count. And that should not be the case. Is that the game should play consistently. The performance and the options available to you should not change depending on your mode. You should have the ability to choose what weapons you want and how you want your mech to play, regardless of the mode that you're in.
The problem is when you put that into a 3v3 or a 6v6, the build heavily dictates, especially depending on how good a specific build is, will heavily dictate a game if you aren't in a 6-stack or a 5-stack. Because if people are running meta builds, that's all you're going to see anyway. And in a 3v3 or a 6v6, it's not going to be as fun as if you go in as your standard mechs. But then extraction shooter, when you have... I also think the extraction should have a 3v3 mode, but that's neither here nor there. You have...
Let me interject real quick. I just want to bring this up. That you just brought up an interesting point, and I want to point this out. Because you said, if you allow this, you're only going to see the meta build in a 3v3 or a 6v6. You are enforcing the meta by having pre-selected loadouts and the inability to choose it. Is that you are changing the natural meta for the developer selected meta. Is regardless, one type of play style is going to be played more commonly than another play style for that character. It doesn't matter if there's customization or not. That's
the thing. I would disagree with the sentiment that there is inherently going to be a developer picked meta.
If you make everybody run stock, you're already choosing what is effectively the meta for that character because there's no other options, literally.
Yeah, but I disagree with the sentiment that the developers, maybe it was just bad phrasing, but that it's a developer picked meta in the sense that the developers knowingly make certain aspects of characters better so that they make players play them. Whereas I think, especially in fighting games, you can have a character with this specific set of skills, but tier lists will vastly differ depending on even the region that you go to. There might be a top 3 or a top 5, but if you have somebody who's really, really good at a specific mech, like let's take Marvel Rivals, for example, we've got Wolverines running around even before Season 1 in Season 0 who are doing really well because they were able to communicate with a team to give them that support. Whereas Wolverine, if you are just queuing into randoms, is terrible to play because you need that support and not everybody's going to want to give that to you. So that's why I say you can have the best of both worlds. You have the 3v3 and the 6v6 as just stock, and then you have the extract as the customization ones, only because players will develop a meta regardless. And I think having a mode where you don't have to go with the specific pieces of gear that you have to get from the extraction mode into your 3v3 and the 6v6 means that people can just play those modes without that worry, as well as be competitive because they are good at what they play, potentially. But then you go into the big, large-scale warfare game mode, you can customize your mechs, hopefully not to an insane degree that they completely lose what they are, but to suit your specific playstyle. If you want to play, for example, a Panther that has daggers and a cloaking system, you can do that because it's still part of your archetype being melee and quick and whatever. But I think if you do too much of that and make mechs modular in a much smaller game mode like a 3v3 or a 6v6, it will completely break the game.
Okay, I'm gonna interject here. If are you finished with your point? Because I don't want to. Okay, I don't want to interrupt you. Is that this is what I meant by a developer enforced meta for a character specifically, right? Is let's say hypothetically, right? Because I don't know what Panther's gonna have for options.
Yeah.
Is that Panther has an option between the lance and a sword. Okay. This is purely hypothetical. I don't know if Panther's going to have a sword. And people like the way the sword plays better, right? Just for whatever reason, they like the way that the sword plays better more than the lance. If that becomes the kind of the community default, because just more people like the way the sword plays, right? That's not a bad thing. But because that just kind of becomes the character's identity in a way. Is that Panther becomes less known for the lance and more known for because hey, they made a good sword. Sword's fun. But you're gonna have this gravitation anyway. And I don't think restricting options is a good option because it's like I do think you are also greatly kind of exaggerating the difference that weapons do make in terms of character performance and whatnot is that play style will change in a game like Team Fortress 2, right? But it doesn't make the character broken. None of the characters are broken by themselves. It requires a team with communication, regardless of what loadout you're using, to win a game. That's the whole point of the game. And when you're getting into a 3v3 and a 6v6 mode, it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter what weapons you're using. No weapons should outclass other weapons. Everything should be a viable option in that character's kit. It's like maybe you like the way a shotgun plays. Maybe you like the way a rifle plays. And I mean like assault rifle. Maybe you like it the way an SMG plays, right? Maybe you like one type of gun more than another type of gun. They shouldn't necessarily outperform each other. Like they need to be balanced. Again, what determines the way a match goes should be ultimately communication and player skill.
Yeah.
And I feel like by enforcing a meta, you're also putting lower skilled players at a disadvantage by enforcing everything to be stock, right? Because somebody with Panther, right?
Mm.
They may not be good with the lands. They may get the sword. They may understand how the sword works, right? And however slight tweak that may change may make that finally click with them. Because for me, like I mentioned with Team Fortress 2, it was the Tomislav. Is that it doesn't actually perform better than the stock minigun. In fact, it's actually worse. The damage output on it is way worse. But what makes it so unique and what changed the playstyle so much is that you had near instantaneous deployment time. But if you get into a slugging match with another heavy, you are going to lose. And so it doesn't become who has more damage, it becomes who has first strike potential. And it makes you think about your positioning and, where's your team? Are you going to be able to do an effective push? And I feel like weapons shouldn't be these massive game breaking things. They should just slightly tweak a character's playstyle to something that you're going to be more comfortable with. Like, weapons aren't necessarily going to make a character broken. They may just make a character more accessible. And when you make everything run stock, not everybody's going to vibe with stock. And somebody that may be able to do good normally, that maybe they're on a lower end, like for like skill and whatnot, may not be able to play the character they normally play because for whatever reason, the stock loadout just doesn't click with them. And I feel like we're doing them a disservice by locking that to the PvPvE mode. I forget what it's already called. And a 1v1 setting is that they should be able to perform consistently regardless of what the mode is. And
and this
in a way, trying to
this
make things more fair, we're making them unfair.
that's where I butt heads with a lot of people, in that the appeal it may have for one person, it will have the opposite effect for another person. So when we talk about accessibility, I very much am an advocate for barriers of entry being low, because it means that everybody can pick up the game. But that same argument, in that people might not click with this weapon, but they'll click with that weapon, is the reason why fighting games have so many characters. The ability to swap from one character to another because that playstyle fits you better is part and parcel of playing a competitive game that has stock movesets. Let's use the word movesets, for example. The difference is there is no extraction war mode in a fighting game. You have your character, you fight somebody else's character, and you have your toolkit. Some toolkits are extremely good to the point of being broken, especially when we're talking about the Tekken curse. That's why you have developers that change stuff, they nerf, they buff, they rework. That's their job. And I think, personally, if I was given options to make my life easier as a player in a 3v3 or a 6v6, I don't feel like that would make me enjoy the game more, because I feel like I'm being condescended to. If I pick up Panther, I'm just going to use Panther as an example, and he's difficult to play because the lance has a charge time, you have to learn how to have your shield up, you have to learn the perfect parry timing, you have to be better at maneuverability because you don't have a ranged weapon. Giving somebody a different melee weapon in a 3v3, 6v6 scenario that isn't a massive map isn't going to make them a better player. And ultimately, what I want people to be in a competitive game, whether they play quick play or competitive, is to be better. And I think catering too much to people just to make their lives a little bit easier in the beginning, because you also have to take into account the customization options that you can only get from the extraction mode, and also MMR rating in this conversation as well. The better that you get with a specific weapon, if you are able to change it out, is only going to get you so far. You still have to be really good at that specific weapon. That it may end up being that you get hard locked behind a specific rank because you're just not good enough. So giving them that initial entry isn't going to do anything in the long run. It's just going to keep them around for another week, or they're just going to be stuck playing the exact same quote unquote rank as they always will. Which is why I am steadfast in my belief that the ability to customize should only be available in the most extreme modes, because that's where the most quote unquote extreme players will be, where you're able to customize a mech within its archetype to your heart's desire. But the people that just want to play stock and want to play the hero shooter aspect of it have that place. And to me, that would be 3v3 and 6v6.
Am I good to go now, or?
No, you have to stop talking. Yeah, you're fine. Go for it.
Okay. So this is another aspect, actually something we talked about earlier, way earlier in the pod, was power creep. And if we want to add replayability and help prevent power creep, right? Because character bloat is a real issue. It's an issue in fighting games. It's an issue in gacha games. It's an issue in turn-based RPGs. You name it.
Just very, very quickly, I would disagree with that assessment. I think the more characters a fighting game has, the better, because it gives every single player an opportunity to vibe with a specific archetype of character. When a fighting game first comes out, it's a problem because there aren't as many characters. But as the seasons progress and more characters get added, it's only better. So carry on.
As I was saying though, is that Honkai Star Rail, on the other hand, would disagree with you, because it's gotten to the point where the kits aren't identical, but utility wise, there are characters that are just fundamentally better. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. Bronya. Bronya was a character that was introduced with Vanilla Star Rail. Her utility was being able to advance a unit in the turn rotation from basically wherever they were at to being immediately after her. That was her whole gimmick.
Okay.
Right? Now, you have characters to do the exact same thing, but they'll restore skill points or greatly increase the crit rate or damage, or maybe they'll bring, like, if they've got a summon with them, up with them. And
But like a bit more utility.
But the point is, they either do her role and make her completely incompetent, like completely irrelevant. There's no reason you'd want to run her. And when we get into, and a similar thing happened with Siege and whatnot, where it's like you start having overlap with different operators, right? And this is going to happen with Mecha Break eventually. There's only so many ideas or so many ways you can draw a square. Okay? There's only so many ways. And eventually we will get overlap. But if we want to add replayability and help keep things balanced, is because how Team Fortress 2 does their weapon system, right?
Right.
Nothing is a straight upgrade. Nothing is a straight upgrade. Every weapon, every utility item has a downside, right? Sometimes often severe. There are weapons where if you use them, you will take more damage. As like kind of to remind you, like, better know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to get your ass kicked. And I feel like having a system, because even Rainbow Six Siege, right, which is a hero shooter, has multiple weapon options for their characters. Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't break the game. Like, for example, take Frost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Frost has access to a shotgun, or she can do an SMG, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whichever one you vibe with isn't gonna determine if, she's a broken character or not. It's, do you prefer an SMG? Do you perform better with an SMG? Or do you perform better with a shotgun? It's not that deep because we have seen with games like Rainbow Six Siege is that player comfort isn't necessarily a crutch, right? People may be able to get to a higher rank because they like, running an SMG with, sidearm and her, her little booby traps instead of running around with a shotgun, which, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because they may like the range option that it gives her. But I think you are overestimating the power different weapons would give these mechs, especially if we give them built-in downsides that make you think twice of, do you really want to do this? And I feel like a good example, and actually kind of reminded me when you brought up Panther, like you didn't want Panther to use a weapon, right? Do you play Team Fortress 2 at all out of
Nope.
curiosity? And just okay. So there's a character in Team Fortress 2. Is probably the biggest exaggeration of items changing up a character working together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the demo man. Now, the demo man comes stock with a grenade launcher, a sticky bomb trap, and then a glass bottle for his melee weapon. Okay. Over the years, with the different items added, you could completely change how he functions at a core level. Um, Basically, one of and this play style became known as demo night, right?
Right.
Where you would swap out the primary, right? For either some shoes or a peg leg, and then you'd get a shield. And then the shields would allow you to charge. Now, the different shields would do different things. You had the tide turner, which allowed you to charge forward, but increased the turning radius. I forget the name of the other one that allowed you to charge forward, but you were kind of in a dead set path, but it would give you more momentum. And then you had access to all these different melee weapons. You had the Claudia Moore, which was a big great sword and whatnot that Demo Knight was able to use. You had the Eyelander, which started you off as really, really weak. You actually had less health than the stock Demo Man.
Mm-hmm.
But the more kills you got, your maximum health would increase. And so it would reward you by being good at the game. It would increase your movement speed, increase your overall health pool, and you'd basically be converted into an entirely melee class. And while I don't think we'd ever see anything like that in Mecha Break, it wasn't an inherently bad thing, and it wasn't game breaking either. Is there was still counters to it. It wasn't busted. You'd see it in competitive play every now and then, but it was fun. It was really fun. People would often pair it with the stock grenade launcher, where basically they would drop two stickies on the ground, detonate it to get some air, and then would fly across the map and get into the back line of the enemy team, and then start chopping up their support units. So, like their snipers, their medics, you name it. And I don't think adding more utility is necessarily a bad thing. I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on this, but that's just my 2 cents of having played games where customization is an option in a PvP setting, and then having also been forced to run stock in those same games. I tell you, it's not as fun because whenever the item servers would go down in Team Fortress 2 and then everybody has to run stock, nobody's really having as much fun. And I don't think that that's a bad thing to keep customization. Now, I do think the crazy mods or whatever is going to happen in this extraction mode, yes, they do need to be kept out. But I think weapons, no, I disagree. Is that I think that weapons should at least be allowed to be swapped out. I don't think that they should be crazy departures from the character like the demo knight that I gave the example of. But also high drama. Sorry, one of my friends. But I strongly disagree. Is having put over 1.6 thousand hours into Team Fortress 2, a game that gives you a lot of control over how your character plays, and then a frequent common problem of Team Fortress 2 being the item servers going down and then everybody being forced to run stock. It's just it's not as fun. I've experienced this firsthand and it's not the same. Anyway, that's
I
gonna
think,
be my take on this.
well, I think first off, you are right. We're not going to agree because we come from two different competitive scenes where you're used to Team Fortress and the very modular aspect of the items, where I'm very much in terms of like fighting games and understanding that you have your kit, and if you don't like your kit, you just pick another character. And then if you vibe with that character, you vibe with that kit, then you go with it regardless of if it's a top tier kit or not.
Mhm.
But my main concern is that the modularity of mechs means that you have to kind of go in all or nothing.
Mhm.
So being able to change out just your weapons would seem fine to a degree, but
I think it's a fair compromise.
you have to, that is in the hands of the devs, because hypothetically, yes, you could have a panther, you could have a lance, you could have another sword instead of the shield, you could have daggers, you could have a spear, and they changed the way that the move list works dramatically. But in order for that to be fun from a competitive standpoint, it needs to be balanced. And I don't think it ever will be, because that's just the nature of competitive games.
Mhm.
You have counter picks for a reason in games like Rivals and Overwatch. There are matchup charts that extend into the thousands for fighting games because of how many characters there are in certain games. I think the best way that we could have this compromise is you separate it between quick play and competitive. In quick play, anything fucking goes. You want to run five, six Panthers? Go ahead. All with different loadouts. I don't care. It's quick play. It only affects your quick play MMR. Couldn't give a shit. But in competitive, there needs to be a standard. Because if you want a game like Mecha Break to succeed, there has to be some kind of esports scene. And having too much modularity in an esports scene means there's too much volatility. And I think that's the way that we could compromise on this, in that the quick play and the more casual side of stuff, where you are free to experiment and free to play whatever you want because it's the most fun, as compared to the competitive side of things, where you have to have what is at least decent, not necessarily top tier, but decent, and that you're good at. And that's how I see it working out.
Yeah. I think you are you did bring up a good point. We do come from very different backgrounds. This is that you come from the fighting game genre. I I very much was invested heavily in the more team shooter stuff of TF2.
Mm.
And that has given me a different perspective on this, because even though, like I said, there's weapons that change up how a character plays and whatnot, hard counters do still exist. Like, for example, it doesn't matter what weapon you have as a heavy, right? You've got 300 HP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it doesn't matter if you're using the Tommy's Love or the Huo Long Heater or the stock weapon. A sniper in the back line with competent aim is going to splatter your brains against the wall
Yeah.
regardless of what you're using. It doesn't matter, because sniper is your hard counter. On the other hand, is that as a spy, right? You
Yeah.
can use the dead ringer, which basically makes a fake corpse after you get detected. So
I know
basically,
about a dead ringer. That's
yeah.
a major thing in TF2. I know about that. Yeah.
Or you can use the stock invisible watch, or you can use the knife that basically when you okay, so spy checking in TF2, right?
Hmm.
Is that the pyro is spy's hard counter, where the pyro is able to basically for very cheap spray around fire. And if you are an enemy spy, you are going to get set on fire. Well, there's a weapon for the spy that helps fix this problem. It's called the Spicicle, where basically, rather than combusting into flames, you temporarily do not combust, but it makes a loud noise, letting people know, hey, there is a spy here who has this item. This item has been used, right? And it also takes away your ability as the spy to actually stab and kill people because your knife is what put you out. And it is less of a get out of jail free card of like, being detected, and more of a you need to get the hell out card before you get caught.
Mm. Yeah.
And is that none of these things, if they're done properly, make a character broken or different. And I come from a basically long background of playing stuff like TF2 and games like Armored Core, where customization over your loadout is very much a core part of both of these games' identities. And when I see, a mech game that is a hero shooter, I expect that it's going to have the standard of these two games where, this is not Overwatch. This is not Marvel Rivals. TF2 was the granddaddy of the hero
Mm.
genre. It was the granddaddy. Team Fortress, the original Team Fortress was the granddaddy. And I kind of expected to see the traditional standard of that because Marvel Rivals and Overwatch having set loadouts aren't the standard, they're the exception. They're not the established long standard. And when you've got a mech genres in general are defined by their customization and their ability to choose what goes on your mech. And I feel like you're almost making the mistake of Gundam Evolution. Not Gundam Evolution, what was I thinking of? I can't remember. Point is, though, is that I feel like you're making a mistake by having a genre which is defined by customization and putting the fighting standard on it of, oh, if you don't like it, just pick a different character. Because customization has been a core staple of the mech genre's identity as a whole. And while this may be fine for fighting games, you're going into a genre where the expectation has already been set. And I don't think that's a good idea. I will cede the floor. Wait, hold up before I do. I want to read what I am a Bob wrote here. I think with esports in mind, I don't see much issue with mods and weapon loadouts, at least if these are all standardized or something. Because one, all this modularity is defining aspect of the game. That's like removing building from Fortnite. And two, boosting the play style of players and their strikers using these changes while increasing the variability in what players and spectators have to keep in mind is something that can come to terms with through playing the game and commentators. A saying moment. Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. But yeah, it's just that I don't feel like, especially when we've seen games like Rainbow Six Siege have autonomy, which is a hero shooter, over what weapons go in your loadout, and it doesn't ruin the game. I don't think that having autonomy over what goes in your loadout, like in Team Fortress 2, like in Rainbow Six Siege, is a detriment in any capacity. And I believe it runs completely contrary to the spirit of the genre. Anyway, I'm done with my points.
So, okay, there's a few things that I think
Mm-hmm.
that I disagree with. So, first of all, Overwatch is the standard, and it has been since Overwatch 1. Regardless of what came before it, Overwatch is now the standard, which is why Marvel Rivals is the way it is.
If Overwatch is the standard, then God help us.
I mean, it does, sure, but it doesn't matter. That is the standard of hero shooter. You have characters with abilities and specific weapons, and that's what a hero shooter is now defined as. Second thing, Rainbow Six Siege is not that modular. Six Siege allows you to pick your main, your secondary, like all good shooters will do, your gadget, and then you have your middle button, whatever the fuck they call it, and I can't remember what they call it. But the way that they alter the game is so minimal that it doesn't really matter, because every single operator has a weapon that is the best weapon. You will have like what was it, Frost you were talking about? The shotgun.
Frost, yeah, the SMG or the shotgun.
Yeah, Frost, from when I played, I don't remember a single time in ranked that you would ever want a Frost running shotgun, outside of maybe placing a trap in the most unsuspecting place possible, hiding around a corner, and then capping them with a shotgun. But in that situation, you might as well just keep the SMG, because not only is it better at medium range, it still does the job on somebody who's in your trap. Plus, you have the advantage of range. So, taking that example, there are always best weapons for operators in Siege, which is because they're just inherently unbalanced. That's just the way that Ubisoft have made the game. And I would worry that having modular weapons in Mecha Break would do the same thing, is in that you are gimping yourself and your team if you're in a ranked 3v3 or a 6v6, that you pick the weapon that you may be more comfortable with, but is still not as good as somebody who's more comfortable with the better weapon. In a perfect world, it would be balanced. In a perfect world, every single fighting game would be balanced, and everybody would be in A tier or B tier or S tier or whatever. But unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. And that's the reality of a competitive game. There are characters that are top tier, characters that are bottom tier, characters that are mid tier. You just have to deal with that.
1 second. I wanted to address Taco's comment here. What are you going to swap a sniper? Let's say, 1 second.
What are you going to swap a sniper out with?
What are you going to swap a sniper out with? Okay, why not have multiple different types of sniper? Why not have one that is like a semi-automatic? Why not have one that is like charged up like a rail shot?
See, yeah, and I agree with the sentiment 100%. There is no reason why you have to stick a sniper rifle, like a single shot, for argument's sake, a bolt action on a like a Keeler, for example. There's no reason why they have to have that one sniper. You could have a DMR, which is semi-auto, or you could have a shorter range one.
Sorry, this is part of the reason why I brought up Team Fortress 2 originally, is that when Taco's talking about, like, what are you going to swap a sniper out with? And we're talking about like different types of sniper. It still keeps in line with the spirit of the character, right? Is that in Team Fortress 2, for the most part, the weapon, like for example on heavy, it's still a minigun. At the end of the day, it is still a minigun. It doesn't matter what weapon you're using, you're going to have a minigun as your primary. For the soldier, it doesn't matter what rocket launcher you're using, it's going to be a rocket launcher. And so I feel like maybe a slight tweak to how the weapon plays would be best, rather than having, say, like what the Rainbow Six Siege has, where like you said, like, oh well, everybody's gonna run the SMG. Why not have multiple different types of the SMG?
Because people are still going to pick the better SMG, because that SMG is going to be on everybody's kit who has an SMG anyway, and they're going to know what has the least recoil, the most damage, the least spread. The best weapon in that category will always be picked, especially for a competitive meta. But
this is where we're getting into player choice versus meta, and I think people should have the option to choose the inferior weapon.
which is fine. But what you're inadvertently doing, maybe even directly doing by giving players that choice in a much more smaller competitive setting, is the ability to gimp your team because you are picking the lesser weapon, which is why the only way to make this work, at least in my view, is to have a casual, quick play series of matches and the competitive one. Because if you want to go into a game and you're queuing up, you have to have an expectation in a competitive queue, a ranked queue, whatever, that people are going to understand the kit that they have and are good at it. Maybe if you're lower rank, that expectation is, it should be lesser because you're all still learning the game. You're not all amazing at the game, which is why you're not like
Can I
diamond
give
or
an
whatever.
actual up-to-date example since you stated that Marvel Rivals is kind of the new standard, right? Let's take
Well,
Scarlet
I'd
Witch.
say Overwatch is the standard, and Marvel Rivals has copied it to the extent that it doesn't have modularity. But yeah,
Let me get to the point. So this actually ties into what you said. Let's take the characters, for example, right?
Mhm.
Scarlet Witch is not played at the high end levels,
True.
right? Because her damage output's not there, right?
Mhm.
But people enjoy playing her at the low end levels. And even though she may be an inferior character at the higher end levels, right?
Mhm.
The option to play her is still there, and people will enjoy that at the lower end ranks. And so forcing everybody into a nice, neat, and tidy little box rather than having a vast array of choices, which is going to change depending on what rank you're in, kind of runs contrary to that. Because in Marvel Rivals, for example, you're not going to see Scarlet Witch at high end.
True.
You're not going to see her at high end. Does that mean she should be removed from the game because she's not optimal? No, absolutely not. And that is what we're doing here. Is that by denying people the choice, you're effectively taking characters like Scarlet Witch out of existence. Well, some people like playing that.
Which is why you have to have separate queues then, because the point of ranked is to rank up. So once you eventually get,
ranked.
yes, but you're conflating two different things because the character still exists. She doesn't have modularity. She exists as that character. So if anything, it reinforces my point because
we were talking about how you said that if you don't like a character or you don't like something,
yeah,
right, you should just swap off to a different character. I was comparing that with the loadout system, where it's like, oh, this combination of weapons isn't optimal. Do you kind of get what I'm trying to say with this?
I understand what you're saying, but the comparison doesn't work because what the comparison should be taking, say, Scarlet Witch, and let's, for argument's sake, say Panther is also not as viable. It would be like saying take Panther out of the game completely. That's not what I'm saying. That's why you need the separate queues. You need, for the players that want to play it competitively and have the core roster available with their toolkit, they're there. And the point of playing in ranked is to rank up, get better, for whatever your personal reason. I don't really care what that reason is. But if you want the modularity and you want the customization that would allow you to play different weapons and whatever, go into the casual queue, go into the non-ranked queue or whatever you want to call it.
This is ultimately where we're getting conflicted here, is because you're saying, like, go into the casual queue and whatnot. In Rivals, right, is that this filter applies naturally. People aren't going to pick the optimal option naturally. And that's what I'm saying here, is that people will automatically filter out what character is going to work at high end rank, what character is not going to work at high end ranked. And I don't think that it's as big of an issue as enforcing stock, because people just do this anyway. They'll pick what works and what doesn't in high end play. And like you said, for example, Panther, whatnot. If Panther doesn't work at high end play, It's not going to be removed. It's just people aren't going to pick it. And I don't think that's necessarily fair having a separate queue entirely, because what we have in Rivals, right, is we've got the different ranks. Everybody starts off at Bronze 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you progress through the ladder. But as you progress through the ladder, naturally, the characters that are being picked is going to start changing, because you're getting into a more competent skill area where
Mm-hmm.
people are landing their shots. They know what to do. They know how to counter certain characters. They're not playing the game brain dead compared to people that still want that competitive experience, right? But aren't gonna be super sweaty and they don't really care where they end up.
Well,
And
okay, then I have to disagree completely. Then don't go into ranked. Because
Mhm.
you're there for a completely separate reason to everybody else. The prevailing understanding and viewpoint of going into a ranked queue is to rank up. So if you want a ranked competitive experience, that's why Siege has the non-ranked comp queue, or whatever the hell it's called, where you don't get your ranked MMR affected, but you still have that experience. That's why there's that separate queue. But if you want a competitive experience in Marvel Rivals, but you don't really care who you play, then you're going to stay at low rank anyway, or don't play ranked.
This is,
That's,
I
yeah.
just want to make sure
Yeah.
you're done. But yeah, no, look, I do agree with you in somewhat, because it does drive me nuts when people don't play comps seriously, because like it was a big issue with I used to play Counter-Strike with an ex-boyfriend in his friend group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to name names because I'm on Twitch.
Name and shame. Name and shame.
Point is, though, this was years ago, is that I was brought in to be their fifth stack, right? And I am a very competitive bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you've hopped on any of my streams. I get very competitive. But what would drive me nuts is when basically two members of our team, because they were his friends and whatnot, just didn't care and would kind of throw the match because they thought it was funny and whatnot. That does drive me nuts, right? It's like, if you're gonna be silly, if you're gonna be a goofball, don't play competitive, right?
Mm.
But if you want the competitive experience and you don't want to have to deal with the silly people that are going to be in quick play,
Mm.
this is what I was trying to get at, is that, because you're right, some people just aren't going to be good. They're not going to be good. They're going to naturally settle at a certain rank. And though they're going to struggle and try their hardest, they're not going to get out of that rank, right? Now, I don't think I still hold the opinion that we shouldn't have how the game changes, at least with the weapons, separated. Because I think that having the options there is kind of important, because I feel like, for the lower ranked players and whatnot, having that option is just for their fun, right? Because
Mm.
even though you go to play through the ranks, you're ultimately there to have fun. Now, how I have fun is being serious, but do you kind of get what I'm saying here? Is that if something's not optimal, it's going to automatically be filtered out at higher end play. Is you're not going to have at the higher levels people that are incompetent, that are knowingly kneecapping their team. And if they are, then they're kind of dickheads and they're going to do it anyway. I'm going to have to agree to disagree on this.
Well, that's why I say
Mm-hmm.
the modularity argument, and then trying to compare it to filtering out a larger roster, is not the same thing. Because what it just isn't. Because when you get to the higher ranks, yes, you will filter out the bad characters or the less viable characters and the bad players.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you want to have fun, you don't go into ranked just to have fun. If all you want to do is have fun, there is that queue for you.
Let me just say
So,
something real quick because this is going to be a lot more relevant. Armored Core 6. Okay? Armored Core 6 has a built-in PvP mode, right? I
mhm.
used to stream it a lot on my channel, and getting to S rank was a big stream series that I did. And it took a lot of streams, but I finally got to S rank. But the point is, right? When you all of Armored Core's about, right? Is about having customization control over your build, right?
Mhm.
That's the core identity of Armored Core, being able to choose and customize the fundamental parts of your mech. As you progress from D rank all the way up to S rank, while certain builds, like I used to have this build, I called it ginger tea. 'Cause I used to love having ginger tea with honey. It was long story. Point
Okay.
is, um, it was a lightweight bipedal mech, right? With 2 needle pistols. Okay. I quickly learned that while this may fly at D rank and C rank, at B rank, it does not fly. And I get my ass beat. So I go back to the drawing board and then I have to come up with a new mech, which I named Bochard Glock, which was a BVO build. If you want to, Chad, if you want to know what a BVO is, you can look it up. I'm sorry, we're running a bit late. I don't want to go. We're already like almost
Yeah.
3 hours into this. But the point is, as you progressed up the competitive ladder, what builds were viable began to drastically decrease until you were naturally settled into a sort of meta, right? Where you can still have a competitive and fun experience at a lower rank and still climb the ladder and whatnot. But if you want to get to S rank, there's certain play styles you're going to have to adopt. There's certain parts you're going to have to use. There's certain weapons you're going to have to use. Because a lightweight needle pistol build doesn't get you to S rank. It doesn't. It's a fun build. Very fun, especially in 1v1 matches. But in a ranked competitive experience, even though it is a 1v1 thing, like let me clarify, when I said 1v1, I meant like private matches, right? But if you're on the open internet and you're doing ranked competitive, you're up against LCB tanks, uh, you're up against stun builds, you're up against missile boats, and you're woefully outclassed. And things are going to gravitate anyways. And I don't think it matters if the developers enforce a stock meta or not, because there are certain characters at high ranked play which are naturally not going to be chosen. That's just the way things are. Because some people are going to find out that some characters at high ranked play are going to perform better than others. And I don't feel like having more options is a detriment when we know what's going to happen anyway. Like people are going to leave some characters behind at previous ranks regardless. This is just natural with any competitive experience. Happens in Siege, happens in Overwatch, happens in Rivals. It happens. And I don't feel like more options is a detriment, because at the end of the day, the answer is the same. There are just some things that are not going to be viable in high-end play. That's kind of where I was going with this.
Oh, I knew exactly where you were going. I disagree because
We'll agree on that. I don't think we will come to an agreement on that, but
no, I
yes,
know, but
I
it's
am in agreement that
it's
there are things that
it's
are just
basically
naturally
just the fact that trying to conflate the modularity of characters to the abundance of characters is inherently wrong because they're completely different. If
I
Mecha
think
Break launched with 33 characters like Rivals, we wouldn't be having this conversation because the amount of characters would be so varied that you wouldn't need modularity in the characters for 3v3s and 6v6 because you have that abundance. The only issue is the fact that it's releasing with 8, 9 characters, something like that.
I can actually look that up right now. Mecha.
I think.
Let's see how many.
But yeah, a very limited number of mechs, and
yeah, it looks like it's about. Hold up. Mecha Break. Does it tell you on CSUN's website how many mechs they've got? Oh yeah, it is right here. Select Striker. There are 13. Oh,
13 including Panaka. Yeah. Okay. Amy's gone. But yeah, 13 including Panaka. I don't know if there's any new ones from a different test or whatever. But yeah, this is if Marvel Rivals had launched, and this is the point that I'm making. If Marvel Rivals had launched with 13 characters, you would be feeling the lack of diversity more just because there isn't any.
I'm trying to come back.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm keeping them occupied. My God. Yeah, that you would feel the lack of diversity because there isn't enough. But with Marvel Rivals, it doesn't matter. Welcome back. With Rivals and even Overwatch, it doesn't matter that some get left behind because there's an abundance of characters that you can choose from. Same with Rivals. But having the limited amount of characters available at launch is the problem at the moment. As we progress through the seasons and hopefully as the game gets more support, they add new suits, they add different types of weapons. At that point, I would say modularity becomes even less important in the smaller game modes because you have that abundance of characters. Where it really makes a difference, especially playing extraction shooters for a while, like Hunt Showdown, Tarkov, God, what's the other one? I'm trying to remember what the other extraction shooter is. It's like no, it's like Tarkov but less intense. Trying to remember what it's called. Somebody in chat's gonna know. I'm sure of it. But yeah, understanding that it's the gear that you acquire in that mode, you take back into the extraction mode again because that's what you have earned. If you take the gear that you get from the extraction mode into a 3v3 or a 6v6, you are not only locking people out of being able to acquire these things, unless what you would want is just to have all the weapons unlocked for 3v3 or 6v6. What you're doing is you're locking people out who don't want to go into the extraction mode out of those choices, and they have to go stock anyway. So, yeah, that's the final thing. We're not going to agree on it, and that's totally fine, because we're going to both play Mecha Break anyway. It doesn't fucking matter. This is all just opinions. And thank you for the chat for getting involved as well. It's been interesting to read it on the side while we've been talking about this. Anything else that you wanted to talk about, Amy? Because if not, I have something I want to ask. So.
Yeah, go ahead. I am. Well, my tracking's been a little bit fucky ever since my.
That's fine. Are there any questions from chat? So I do this when I do my Final Fantasy podcast, which I've stopped for a while because there's nothing going on. When I was doing other things, podcasty type conversations, I'd always ask the chat. Oh yeah, when I did it for Soul Calibur and stuff, I would always ask the chat if there are any questions they wanted to ask. If there are any questions, please do let me know in the chat, and we'll talk about them now. But let's end on a positive note. What are you most excited for in Mecha Break?
Oh. I'm going to be honest. I have really missed having because like I mentioned, I built my channel originally off of Armored Core PvP. that was very much a core part of my channel's DNA.
Mhm.
And I have missed having a high speed competitive mech game
Mhm.
to actually stream because AC6 is dead. It is so dead on Twitch right now. In fact, let me see how many viewers Armor Core 6 has.
Oh, don't. That's going to be
Let's
depressing.
see how much fires are 85 viewers.
Oh, that's rough.
85 viewers compared to, let's look up Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls.
I'm going to say
1.9 thousand
oh,
viewers.
okay.
1.9K.
Pretty
It's
good.
like, yeah, and meanwhile, Armored Core 6 has a measly 85.
Yeah.
I have missed having high speed mech combat because there is not another game that offers a similar gameplay experience to Armored Core
Mhm.
on the market right now that's mainstream and has the same level of polish. Is that when I got invited to do the closed beta test back in August
Mhm.
and I got to try it for the first time, it was like instantly clicked.
Yeah, same.
And it's like to me it was very much like, holy shit. I've missed this. I have so missed this.
Yeah.
And being able to go back to kind of the roots on what I started my community off of is something I am very much looking forward to because I don't look up.
You just don't look up the numbers for AC6.
Oh god.
Too late.
um but yeah, it's like I have missed it because I loved like I during the closed beta test I'd put on a rock playlist. Sometimes, basically I had a channel for basically like submissions and whatnot, and we had a community playlist and whatnot.
Nice.
Um, and we just chill and do like mecha break, and there is something very satisfying about watching and playing a game where you've got really big mechs moving at really fast, like almost ace combat speeds, just beating the shit out of each other.
It is great.
Yeah, it is great. Like I was a menace with Sky Raider and Panther. So I miss it. I miss it a lot. And I have I have been very excited and very eager, but also very concerned because I want this game to do well. I
Yeah.
want this game to be around for years. I don't want it to come out for a month and then die off.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I want it to establish itself as a unique niche in both the mecha and the hero genre,
Yeah.
and I want it to stick around. And
Same.
so while I have concerns, it's less of skepticism of like, oh, is this going to be like another, hype up scam game? It's like it's more of like I want this game to exist so badly that I am concerned about any flaws that could potentially derail it.
Hmm. No, I'm
And
completely. I agree with that. Yeah.
and I don't know what the optimal path is that, what, you may be right on stock is better. I may be right. We don't know. We won't know until launch on what the general public actually vibes with.
Hmm.
And I just hope that whatever decision they make is the right one. You
Hmm.
know, I may not agree with design elements of the game, but all that matters is that if the general public loves it, that's all that matters. Is that you can still not like some, certain elements of something, but so long as it's popular and it flourishes, it's kind of worth it.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Cool. So, two questions then. First one, get out of the way pretty quickly. When do you stream, Amy?
It depends. I stream sometimes in the mornings and then sometimes in the evenings. Um, like I'm gonna be going live at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, GMT, for Marvel Rivals. Got the Twitch drop campaign going on. So, but as for that I still haven't worked out my schedule for this week because yeah, sometimes I go live at like 6:30, sometimes I go live at 10 o'clock, sometimes I go live at 9:30. Um, my schedule will always be posted on my Blue Sky, which in fact I'm gonna go make and publish my schedule after this. Um, or my Discord is, that's a public Discord. I've got the link in my Twitch about section. Um, I stream a variety of games. I stream horror, I stream action, FPS, you name it. But I do want to make Mecha Break one of the core staples of my channel. Like Space Marine 2 is one of those core games that I play, but it's not something that should stand on its own. Like I'm probably not going to stick with Marvel Rivals once Mecha Break comes out.
Same.
Probably not. It's kind of just to scratch the itch. And a lot of my community is in agreement with that. Like they don't really care about Marvel Rivals. They just really miss Mecha Break. And yeah, I've got a lot of stuff I gotta do. Like I've got to work on a promotion for I've got a new model coming out that's been in the works for several months and it's looking really cool. You know what it is because I've shown you the reference sheet. Um I've got to work on the promotion material for that this week. But yeah, is I've got a lot of stuff coming up and I just really want this game to succeed. What was your second question though?
Well, the second question is, what strikers are you guys thinking of playing? I'll let you go first.
For me, I fucking loved Panther and I fucking loved Sky Raider. I was a fucking menace with Sky Raider. And but Panther was also really fun. And I really did end up vibing with Panther. Um, let's see. Every Falcon is buffed on launch. I had the similar sentiment is that I do feel like Falcon needs a tiny bit of a buff to the damage because what I was gonna say initially is that as somebody that did play Sky Raider, right? I felt like I was doing Falcon's job better than Falcon can do their own job. And I would never lose an engagement to another Falcon, right? As a Sky Raider player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the job of get in, harass, and get out, I was doing that just fine as Sky Raider. And then some. And I feel like Falcon is not where Falcon needs to be because I feel like Sky Raider can do Falcon's job and then some.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that that's good if another character who has the ability to transform, who has the ability to fly around and whatnot, super fast speeds, is able to do the same job. Because it's like, if Sky Raider can do everything that Falcon can do, why are you playing Falcon? Do you kind of get what I'm saying? It's like, especially when Sky Raider has much more hard hitting potential in terms of damage.
Oh, is that all of them?
I'm not sure. Loki Falcon is still a counter to Narukami. But is that Falcon's only purpose though right now?
I think Falcon's fine, but
mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the fun thing about discussions though is that nobody's ever gonna agree on anything.
no, I know that's why they're interesting.
It's fun. It is fun. I did want to thank you very much for having me on. I really did. I really did enjoy it, even if things got a little interesting at times.
No, it's fine. This is what conversations are about.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right.
Cool. Well, so to close out, anything you want to promote? Anything coming up soon?
Well, I will have the new model coming out uh, sometime, if not later this month, then in early January. I do have 3 videos on Space Marine 2. If you want to watch that on my YouTube channel, do you mind if I
No, go for it.
the main link for my YouTube channel real quick?
I didn't know you had one, so I didn't put it in, but
I
fair enough.
yeah, I make some
Oh, there is.
videos. I have I've put 4 out recently that were a bit more high end. I have a Record of Foolishness, Big Bugaloo, Space Marine 2 Experiments, and Bolter Maxing for the Emperor.
Okay.
Yeah, occasionally I'll put out some kind of shit posty videos based off of my VODs and whatnot. They're basically just Twitch highlights with a lot of editing done that are strung together. I've got one in the works for Me Side that's coming out. I'm still working on a bit for that is a royal pain in the ass because I'm not gonna say what it is, but I'm having to like individually like move something frame by frame, and I'm trying to get it to
Ugh,
look right, and it's like,
fuck that.
oh god.
Does not sound fun.
No, it's not fun. It's a lot of work.
Sounds like it. Not gonna lie.
Oh.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, no, other than the new model and a new YouTube video coming out later, and planning to try and stream the closed beta test for Mecha Break if I get the invite again. That's basically all that's got going on with me. And then I'm streaming Marvel Rivals tomorrow at 9:30 a.m.
Sweet. Yeah, it seems like the invites are going region by region. All I know is North Americans that are getting it first. Like, I don't know any Europeans that have got it, so.
God, I hope we get it.
Well, I mean, as in region by region, as in they're sending out the NA ones first, and then they'll do Europe, and then maybe Asia, or maybe they did Asia first and then NA second. Who knows?
I
They're
would
not
be
being
surprised if they
transparent
did
about it, but
first.
yeah.
Because aren't they based out of
They're in China.
was it mainland or Hong Kong?
Mainland, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I would genuinely be surprised if they did not do Asia first, because that just
Yeah.
that seems so strange to me.
True.
It's like I'm guessing probably we'll get EU invites last.
More than likely, unfortunately, but that's just the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Cool. I'll just do some housekeeping as well. My name's Danarai. I used to be a professional commentator for fighting games, specifically Soul Calibur 6. I stream on and off, but now I'm in uni, so I'm streaming whenever I get back from uni most days. I'm off Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. As in I'm off uni, so that's when I stream the most. Fighting games, action adventure games, MMOs, Final Fantasy XIV, and of course Mecha Break when it comes out. Additionally, I'll be doing some IRL stuff because, like I mentioned earlier, the Gundam TCG is coming out in February, especially in beta. So I'm going to do an IRL stream for that, as long as the store will let me do it. And then when we get the actual release in April, May, sometime, I'll be going to tournaments and stuff like that, and I'll be doing more IRL stuff. But yes, that is all from us two. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you to Amy. And I will see you all tomorrow for some more Marvel Rivals. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.